Imagine you're reliving an unbothered life and you suddenly receive a notice that what is awaiting you 8 years into the future is utter destruction. This is the reality of Hirasawa Kazuki. He is an ordinary Japanese university student that you can find anywhere. There is nothing special about him, and he has no particularly redeeming qualities. So why is it that he is standing in front of a peculiar mirror that is trying to pull him into an unknown realm? The scenery in front of him suddenly changes and his worst nightmare turns into reality. He analyzes his surroundings and deduces that he is standing in a royal house. Something about the sight of a maid getting ruthlessly beaten seems oddly familiar to him. That's when it hits him. This is a game from Bravehearts. It is a stereotypical fantasy RPG where the protagonist, Liner, stops an evil scheme that could have led to the destruction of the world. Hirasawa admits that the game is so immersive that he has lost track of how many times he has played it. He practically memorized all the lines in the events, and that is why he's sure that the person standing beside him is Hayden, the head of the Stokes family. Other members present in the room are Jessica, Hayden's wife, and Clara, their servant. Hirasawa knows everyone and everything that is going on around him, so nothing seems unfamiliar to him. But this fact still doesn't comfort him one bit. The question that keeps bothering him is where he was and what he did right before he ended up here. There is another reason why he's so worried right now. As far as he can recall, what is about to unfold in front of his eyes is the most depressing event in the entire game. In the Bravehearts game, this is one of the flashback events where the mother of the main heroine, Clara, is executed by the oldest son of the Stokes family, Harold. But the question is, where is Harold? Hirasawa's memory tells him that in this scene, Harold should be in the arms of his worried mother. Suddenly, Jessica's hands on his head and shoulders start making sense to him. He looks up at her and she seems to be glaring at Clara. He tells himself that this can't be true. He rudely pushes Jessica away, but she just smiles in return. Her words pierce through his heart like a bullet. She refers to him as Harold and tells him that there is no need to worry anymore. Hayden, Harold's dad, grabs his sword and is about to decapitate Clara, when Hirasawa, aka Harold, stops him. With a smile on his face, he requests his father to allow him the pleasure of executing her. It's like Hirasawa has absolutely no control over his body. It moves and says things on its own, and he claims that he has learned this new magic recently and would like to make Clara her training dummy instead of allowing her to stain the room with her inferior blood. His father is proud of his response and orders Clara to be thrown into the dungeon. It looks like Clara is a half-breed and her kind is really hated in the community because they are considered inferior. The voices get muffled for Hirasawa, and he's having a hard time accepting that he is in the body of Harold Stokes, the most hated character in the game due to his heinous and arrogant nature. That's not even the worst part. Harold is doomed to die at the hands of Justice, the last boss. But is he even capable of changing that fate? His body and his tongue move on their own, just like what happens in every Bravehearts gameplay. Hirasawa meets his butler, Norman. As far as he remembers, out of all of the characters, Norman is considered the most sensible. He asks Harold, aka Hirasawa, if he's feeling alright and needs his help. Harold, being the snob that he is, disregards Norman. Still, the butler requests him to lighten the punishment of Clara, whose life or death depends on Harold's decision. According to the story, Clara is incinerated to death by Harold's magic. Having no more relatives, Clara's daughter Colette gets kicked out of Stokes' territory. From that point onwards, the protagonist, Liner, and his family take care of her. Hirasawa knows that if he rescues Clara, he will deviate from the original story where he eventually encounters Liner. He decides to use Harold in such a way that will help him in avoiding death flags. However, he also knows that he can't make huge deviations from the storyline. This way, he might end up dying from a development, but that doesn't even exist in the story. He wants to tell Norman that he wants to save Clara, but Harold's body only gives a bratty response, which only earns him more hate points. There's a high possibility that if he dies here, he might never be able to return to the real world. Hirasawa knows better than to cry over spilled milk. He gets up and starts reading every book he can find in Harold's room. The only thing he can do now is gain as much knowledge about the world as he can. Hirasawa is led to the dungeon by one of his knights. He orders him to guard the entrance. The receptionist is caught lacking, and he's shocked to see Harold-sama in the dungeon himself. However, Hirasawa doesn't respond and makes his way downstairs. He asks Clara about her daughter and confirms if all the information he remembers is correct or not. She affirms that Colette is her only daughter and her husband died of an illness 3 years ago. When Clara begs him to spare her life, Hirasawa feels like bawling his eyes out, but Harold the spoiled brat cusses at her and leaves. Still, Hirasawa has started to make some progress and he's proud of that. He arranges a meeting with Norman, who brings a map of Stokes' territory with all the information regarding settlements located in and around the territory. When Hirasawa asks how he plans on saving the servant, Norman responds that the best option is to relocate her outside of Stokes' territory. Hirasawa calculates that to pursue this plan they will need to get some laborers and taxpayers on their side. For Harold, this is no biggie, and Hirasawa is planning to use that to his advantage. Norman recommends that they should help her in fleeing to the Blowish village. Hirasawa knows that this is where the Liner family lives. If they were to follow through with this plan, Harold would be doing something good in this timeline, and the original story of Colette and Liner meeting would still be preserved. Norman suggests that it would be impossible for Clara and her daughter to survive with 0 possessions in an unfamiliar land. Hirasawa analyzes and writes down everything Clara and Colette might need on their journey. Norman is shocked to see this caring side of Harold. He is even shocked to realize that Harold is familiar with and concerned about Clara's daughter. Norman is an intelligent character. He quickly deduces that something is up and Harold is not acting like himself. He believes that Harold claimed to use Clara as his magic test subject just so she could be isolated in a secure location. In his eyes, all this time Harold has been trying his best to save Clara. This pumps him up to give the mission his best shot for Harold's sake. Norman believes that it doesn't matter who the person inside Harold is. He just knows that he is the last ray of hope to change the Stokes family for the better. The next day, Hirasawa finds an abandoned place and practices magic. His jaw drops to the floor when he sees flames emerging from his hand. Although he admits that the chanting part is very embarrassing, he is still getting hyped up. He knows that what he's capable of doing right now is nothing compared to Harold's magic ability in the game. Right now, Hirasawa has 2 aims in mind. He wants to allow Clara to escape, but he also wants to make it look like she was burned to death by its flames. He is extra careful right now because this isn't a game anymore, and Clara isn't just some pixels on the screen. She is a real human being that he must save. Failure is not an option for him. He plans to carry out his mission that night. The sun has set and the sky is taken over by a blanket of stars. It's time for Hirasawa to carry out his mission. With the help of Norman, he takes Clara to her daughter Colette. He tells them that they only have 2 options. One is to die, and the other is to leave the place and sever ties with anyone they've ever known. It is interesting to see that Hirasawa is still speaking in Harold's arrogant tone. He claims that it would be much easier for him to just kill off both of them. For some reason, Colette seems to be blushing a lot. In the original storyline, she was supposed to meet Liner first, but in this timeline, she is meeting Harold first. It is quite possible that Harold has gotten himself a waifu. He rolls his eyes and gives Colette a necklace and makes her promise that she will never take it off. He is definitely trying to rizz her up. Or maybe he has some other ulterior motive. Nevertheless, Colette's face is bright red. Hirasawa tells her to give the necklace to a man who is her age and is willing to protect her. Colette obviously has no clue what is going on. Harold summons his guard and tells him to bring the wagon for Clara and her daughter. He warns them that if anyone were to find out or if the plan was to fail, everyone's life would become non-existent. To be honest, Harold's guards look like they are the presidents of the Goofball Association. We know for a fact that they're going to mess up everything. After everyone leaves at his order, Hirasawa tries to recall how Clara had gotten on Stokes' hit list in the first place. Apparently, Harold was the cause of all the commotion. He bumped into her while she was watering a flower bed and got all muddy after falling down. It was such a stupid incident that Hirasawa feels embarrassed for being Harold. He shakes his head and prepares himself for his final duty. Meanwhile, Norman is walking away while thinking about Harold's new calm, gentle, and caring demeanor. Suddenly, a loud noise stops him in his tracks. Harold starts laughing out loud like a maniac and starts saying dialogues from his original storyline. He uses his magic spell to destroy the entire forest. Soon, Hirasawa takes over and realizes that he automatically adopts behavior from the original timeline. He takes a breath of relief with the assumption that Norman has already left. He wouldn't want anyone to see him laughing and talking to himself about Clara like an ultimate sadist. He turns around to find that Norman is still standing there. He makes his butler swear that he will take whatever he just saw to his grave. Norman just assumes that Harold is mentally ill and doesn't want anyone to find out. The funny thing about Norman is that he glorifies everything Harold does. If he breathes, it looks majestic to him. He assumes that Harold is mentally ill because he has always persisted with a lonely battle as he treats his true parents like poor role models. Like, dog, chill. It is not that deep. The guards were commanded to leave Clara and Colette on the Blowish village and have one soldier take the wagon to Leeds. He had also ordered the guards to give Clara some gold coins, which he took from his severance pay. Back in the present, Clara smiles as she catches glimpses of her new village. The sun rises and so does her hope for freedom, and this is all thanks to Hirasawa. The next day, Harold tells his parents that he scorched Clara with her magic so much that there wasn't even a corpse left. His parents laugh out so loud as if his son cracks the funniest joke of the century. Hirasawa takes a deep breath of relief when Hayden and Jessica do not suspect him. His rescue operation has been a success. Zen, the guy who took Clara in the wagon, barges into Harold's room, and the latter is, like always, very annoyed. It looks like Harold is currently working on a life potion of restorative characteristics and can be used to promote plant growth. However, he is having a hard time searching for a proper water ratio because the fruits without water are prone to withering after coming into contact with the potion. He uses Zen as his test subject and makes him eat one of the potatoes he has artificially manufactured. Zen remarks that they are sweeter than normal and insanely tasty. It looks like Hirasawa has finally gotten the hang of using magic and this realm's knowledge. Apparently, there have been many natural diseases in Stokes' territory over the last few years, and many farmers have been suffering from poor crop yields. He always knew about the tyranny that Stokes imposed on their self-governed tyranny, but Norman's data has given him a clearer picture of that. Hirasawa has decided to eliminate as many disadvantageous things as possible. He orders Zen to test out his new product on the cooks and take their reviews. Zen enthusiastically leaves, and Hirasawa gets back to practicing his swordsmanship skills. He realizes that he has gotten fairly used to it. He recalls that even though Harold is a scumbag at heart, he used to be a beast on the battlefield. However, Hirasawa has a lot to catch up to be equal to the game of Harold. From his gaming experience, he knows that combat is essential to surviving this RPG world, especially given the fact that this character is going to confront the protagonist party one day. Practice is the only solution, and he isn't going to run from it. Days pass by and seasons change. In a faraway area in the land of Sumeraji, the village's chief informs his daughter that 30% of their land has been currently devoured by some disease. If it continues, they will eventually lose their forestry industry. Therefore, in order to receive support for their ceremony, they have to give their daughter Erica to the son of Stokes' family, Harold. Erica cries for feeling so powerless, but also knows that this is the least she can do for the sake of her people. Harold is having a business meeting with Norman, Zen, and his financial advisor. He shows him a copy of the statement of revenues and expenses that he drafted. He asks him if there are any major errors in the statement. He looks confused and goes through the document again. The advisor reaffirms his stance that there are in fact no errors in it. Harold starts laughing as if trying to mock him. He reassures him that he didn't call him to cause trouble or anything. When he doesn't give a response, he explains that for the last few years, the Stokes family finances have been sinking into the red. The biggest reason is his parents' extravagant lifestyle. They have been using the family's inheritance and the taxes to compensate for that, but that too will not be able to last. As a result, it is an increasing burden on the citizens. The financial advisor agrees by stating that people who had to close down their farms due to financial difficulty have also been increasing. Harold declares that this is a state of emergency, and at this rate, eventually, the Stokes family will collapse. In order to prevent bankruptcy, Harold suggests increasing returns from the agricultural sector. Jake is also the inspector of the agriculture sector, and this is why he has been summoned. Harold signals Zen, who has been desperately waiting for his time to shine. He energetically brings Jake a basket of potatoes that are referred to as Red Groot. As soon as Jake tastes it, he is left starstruck. For some reason, Zen feels very proud of that. Harold explains that this is a crop he raised using a proprietary technique, and he needs Jake's help to take it one step further because he is familiar with the Stokes family finances and lands. With a devilish smile on his face, Harold explains that for his heroic cause, Jake might even anger Hayden, the head of Stokes, and the worst case is that he might even get thrown into the dungeon. Jake is surprised to see how Harold is able to say such stuff lightheartedly. When Jake doesn't refuse, Harold explains the entire LP farming process in which life potions are injected into the crops. He plans to share this with several farmers and begin testing it on portions of fields. The businesses he's planning will be small scale. If successful, he wants to limit the spread of economic disparity between farmers as much as possible. With Red Groot, it usually takes 2 months to be ready for harvest, but by using the LP farming method, it can bear fruit in just a week. Jake is shocked to hear this news. The only problem is that cheap, high-quality goods would disrupt the market, crushing the farmers outside of Stokes' territory. If his father, who adores the money, were to catch wind of this, he knows for a fact that he will try to monopolize it. At the end of his speech, Harold stares at his audience and asks them if they enjoy giving stupid looks or if they were just born that way. Jake admits that he is just caught off guard by all the details he is suddenly sharing. He reminds his squad that he needs advice if something feels a little off. Jake fixes his glasses and comments that Harold was able to discover a groundbreaking cultivation method that surpasses history at such a young age. Norman thinks to himself that Harold doesn't have greed for money or greed and is set on his strong feelings of starving to help the people. He asks his squad if they're willing to become his arms and legs. The tsundere in him kicks in, and he claims that if the people don't accept what he's going to propose, then they're just going to die because they're weak. Over the dinner table, Harold's family discusses Harold's marriage partner. Hold up, isn't bro like 10? They discuss Sumeragi's daughter, and Hirasawa recalls that there was one such character in the original game as well. He realizes that the miasma atmosphere must be causing trouble to the Sumeragi, and another light bulb lit up in his megamind. He wants Sumeragi's head, Tatsuki, a compassionate man, to be on his side, so he can avoid more death flags. Sometime later, he pays them a visit and meets Erika, the girl who will soon become Liner's comrade and the one he should be most cautious about. Now that things have changed, Marion can be troublesome and can prevent her from meeting Liner and becoming a healer for his party. Even if Hirasawa avoids every death flag, if he can't beat the last boss and the world gets destroyed, everything will be meaningless anyway. He wants Erika to think positively of him, but he doesn't want to overdo it. Tatsuki introduces Harold to his wife and his daughter. Hirasawa is anxious that Harold's mouth might just say something arrogant, but surprisingly he respectfully addresses everyone. However, he notices that Erika looks blank. Everyone leaves the duo to spend some time alone, and Hirasawa braces himself for the do-or-die situation. Erika and Harold are left alone to talk for a bit. Therefore, they take a walk around the garden where she introduces herself again. Either she is too polite or she is quite nervous to actually strike up a conversation. Harold tries to match her level of politeness when she spots the cherry blossom tree and shows it to him, revealing that it bears the flower that represents the Sumeragi family. She has a whole story up her sleeve regarding this as well and begins to narrate. Starting off 500 years ago, the feudal lord apparently moved to this exact place and bought some seedlings with him, turning it into the symbol of the Sumeragi family. This is certainly different from the cherry blossom that Harold is acquainted with, shocking the young girl because she had no idea that he bothers himself with such information. Well, he explains the chances of the other cherry blossoms being a possible lookalike, which makes sense because all the trees look the same, right? Anyway, he doesn't care about something like this, so there's no point in thinking about it too much. Erika misunderstands his point, asking if this means that he's not interested in her family. Her question catches Harold off guard for a bit, even though he is fully aware that she is flawless with her conversations. He has no choice but to tell her to continue making her interpretations, even though the poor guy just wanted to change the topic. His response isn't satisfactory to the young girl, who doesn't like him much already, and she has started believing that the boy only wants her family's surname. It might be better for her to hate him with all her heart though, so Harold gets the idea to use some more vulgar lines like this. He mentions that he doesn't need her family's name because his own lineage has noble blood. Plus, her family is the one who came to the Stokes, pitifully crying about their decreasing finances, which surely puts her in the inferior position. His words turn her expression into the scariest one he has ever seen, making him wonder if he has gone too far with his insults. If he continues down this path, then he will surely stay away from his original goal. In order to cause some distractions, he takes out an envelope from his pocket and gives it to the furious girl in front of him, who probably doesn't even want to look at his face for long. Asking her to give the envelope to her father, he is still waiting for her to take the envelope when she directly refuses to do anything for him. Thankfully, Harold knows how to get the job done, as he mentions her suffering dying if she doesn't deliver this letter. Erika considers his words for a few minutes, contemplating if she has anything to lose by listening to him. She is aware that she can't exactly trust him, but takes the letter when he mentions that she can decide to trust him when she has seen the results. This sounds like a fair enough deal. Soon enough, Harold returns back home to be welcomed by Norman, who asks him to rest after his long trip. Well, Harold has no time for his concern as he immediately jumps to business, inquiring about LP farming methods' progress. It turns out that Norman has already explained it to the farmers, and his team has even managed to secure usable fields without any issue as well. It looks like they can begin trial in the next 10 days. Therefore, Harold asks him to continue listening to Jake, who has the brains for this entire scheme. He is surely glad that things seem to be progressing smoothly, with Norman conducting himself well behind the scenes. The good news is that his parents don't suspect anything yet, therefore it'll be fine to observe the Sumeragi family's circumstances for now. He knows that Erika would never disregard a chance to save her people who are suffering from miasma, and she will definitely hand the letter to Tatsuku. The contents of the letter contain the compound item used to make antibiotics, and the range of the miasma contamination, which he had estimated from a dungeon map, which might not solve the actual issue though. At any rate, this issue will surely motivate Erika to become the protagonist's ally. The main question is if Tatsuku will actually trust the contents of some stupid letter written by a 10-year-old, and then make antibiotics as he planned out. He will have to come up with another way to approach her father if this little plan fails, while Erika taking the letter is enough for him currently. A few days later, Harold is training with a soldier who doesn't seem to take him seriously, which angers Harold to the next level. He ends up watching the soldier collapse in fear before even picking up his sword, concluding that it was a mistake to ask him to be an instructor after all. Of course, they are all scared of hurting him and getting punished by his father, so it all makes sense. He is worried about his combat techniques when Norman shows up to announce that he has a guest, and it seems like Erika has decided to pay him a visit. Harold immediately walks towards the visitor's waiting area, thinking about all the possible reasons that she might be here, and it's obvious that he's quite nervous about seeing her. The second he enters, the reason behind her visit is the first question he asks, which sounds a bit rude when a noble has a guest, correct? Erika expected him to apologize for keeping her waiting, but it looks like it's a day of disappointments. Well, Harold surely believes that she should be thankful that he took out some time to meet her, making the girl agree that it is certainly her fault for showing up all of a sudden. She cuts to the chase, starting off with her expression of gratitude on behalf of her family as they have managed to save many of their citizens because of his letter. It's obvious that her father works a lot faster than Harold expected, but he maintains his arrogant personality in front of her, making some taunts about her family jumping at something like bootleg. Fortunately, Erika maintains her composure even when he mentions some sort of compensation for his generosity. Plus, he tells her that the letter only contained a makeshift remedy, which can't serve as a fundamental solution, and there might be side effects as well. It surely won't work on those with a serious condition, and he doesn't plan on caring for her people that much since he already has done enough. Erika agrees that his thought process is only natural because they were engaged for political reasons. As long as they grant her family some honor, the Stokes family would surely maintain face. However, she still can't stop thinking about how Harold went out of his way to help them out. It's still unbelievable that he made this medicine in such a short time, making her wonder about when exactly he decided to develop it. It's weird that he could achieve something that her family couldn't solve for such a long time, and reveals a letter that her father has sent for Harold. He begins reading the letter without even wasting a second, and it looks like Tasuku has expressed his sincere gratitude in at least 6 different ways. Updating him on the progress of the patient, he finally has a special request as he asks Harold to take care of Erika at the Stokes estate for the time being, while their family deals with these issues back home. It seems like Erika had no clue about her father's little request, agreeing that it will be a major inconvenience to Harold if she lives with him under the same roof. Anyhow, the coach she was sent here on has already returned though, and her only choice is to rely on his benevolence. Her smart reply makes Harold smile as he knows that she has got guts, but he declares that there is nothing honorable in fulfilling a one-sided request like this. This surely makes him look like a cold person who doesn't care about his fiancée. Therefore, Erika prepares to leave after he complains about not being repaid well. Her awfully quick exit starts getting him worried though, and soon he is rolling through the town in the Stokes' family coach. It is revealed that a few hours after Erika left his house, Harold's father informed him that Erika will be staying with them for a few weeks. Since it was his father's order, he couldn't possibly refuse, right? This bad feeling totally hit the nail on the head, fully aware that his letter has caused the dramatic change from the original story. He also reaches to pick her up by this time, where Erika introduces her attendant Yuno as well. This new character is even more doubtful for him, making him decide that he will completely ignore these two and just let things pass by, instructing them to mind their own business. But his father has his own plans as he starts announcing his fiance's arrival throughout their mansion. This public humiliation is too much for him to handle when Hayden gives him the responsibility of showing Erika around town the next day as well. He clearly had no choice but to get involved with her. A letter from Harold has arrived at the Sumeragi estate, which is quite suspicious for Tasuku, even though he believes that the Stokes family has nothing to gain since this letter hits towards their family's decline. This surely makes him wonder if someone else is pulling the strings, since nobody can imagine that this letter was written by that boy himself. The question is, who is the author of this letter? And it's clear that it might not be someone who wants to help the Sumeragi family out. It can possibly be someone close to the Stokes family who is willing to provide something Harold desires, or they have surely hypnotized the poor boy. Another way to look at it might be that it's a way to test the Sumeragi family, which doesn't make sense because they are already in a lot of trouble as of now. This indicates a strong possibility of the letter being truthful. Therefore, Tasuku asks Kiryu to prepare the necessities at once, which will be used by the volunteers soon enough. Back at the Stokes' mansion, it's dinner time, and it looks like their new guests are enjoying the delicious meal with the entire family, while Harold maintains a miserable expression. His mother immediately gets up to check for a fever, making him blush for being treated like a child in front of the guests. His parents share a laugh at his reaction when Harold turns the tables on them, mentioning that they should be the ones who are embarrassed for being such a lovey-dovey couple in front of their son. There is an awkward silence at the table, but they manage to get through this dinner soon. Back in her room, Erika mentions that her father thinks that Harold might be connected to a traitor or is being used by them, even though he doesn't look like someone who can be controlled by anyone else. Even though she hasn't found concrete proof against him, she knows that they need to get him to clarify this threat once and for all. At this point, Yuno is revealed to be a detective who is about to go find some clues about Harold's involvement. Apparently, Tasuki ordered Erika to rattle him during the day as well, but it didn't provide any results to them. Does this mean that he's being used as a puppet by someone? This investigation is surely going to take a bit of effort in order to uncover if there is any funny business going on around this mansion. Yuno has been going around town collecting information about the Stokes family, who were quite arrogant, take profits from the commoners by taxes to fund their military, and nobody can start a riot because they will be killed for sure. This information is shocking for the detective until a strange guy whispers some information about Harold and her hair, which is a bit shocking for her. On the other hand, Harold and Erica are taking a tour of the town as well, even though he isn't quite familiar with the area yet. They go over to a shop where he buys a little token for the girl with him, which seemingly makes her cheeks turn red. He is aware that she has ignored the rumors about him killing Clara, but he is still hoping that she hates him spectacularly. This is when he thinks about Clara and Colette's safety, and his parents' anger if they ever find out that he is protecting them. They return home soon, where Harold takes a meeting with Jack, who confirms that all 6 locations are undergoing favorable growth. The harvest might be according to expectations, which makes the boy suggest some possible expansions. Unfortunately, they lack the manpower for the expansions, even though Norman suggests that they can employ Arias and Sexton as inspectors. This suggestion might not be realistic, therefore Harold starts thinking about hiring people from the outside. For now, Jack needs to finish his report, so he continues to tell him that they have not witnessed any effect from the use of life potions. Plus, the chefs haven't reported any differences in tastes either, which doesn't sound like a bad report, but Harold still thinks that they aren't doing enough tests to make good judgments, instructing him to continue monitoring the progress. Meanwhile, Yuno has also returned from the town with her own report about the Stokes family, informing that her in-laws are quite unpopular among the citizens. She also shares the information about Harold, revealing that it seems like he used magic to burn Clara and Colette to ashes. This information is devastating for Erica, even though she knows about the ray of hope that he has found for her people. She is still in shock when Yuno promises to continue spying on him, instructing her to avoid being alone with Harold because they never know what he might do. The servants are gossiping about Erica being unwell since the day she went out with Harold, and it's surely going to sound too good for their boss. On the other hand, the boy is busy practicing his swordsmanship in the forest that he used during the Clara rescue operation. He can freely swing his blade, which makes him feel free, practicing the swift lightning technique a couple of times. Unfortunately, he still doesn't think that his magic is good enough, even though it's just newbie magic, but he's nowhere near a match for Harold in the original story. This is really unacceptable for him, as he wants to match the person's strength in the game, therefore he continues with his special training. He has no idea that Yuno has been watching him from a distance, and she has clearly witnessed something dreadful, as she knows that he must be hiding a dreadful secret if he can't use sword techniques mixed with magic. The only way to find out if that's risky for them is to confront him. However, she might not survive if he decides to bare his fangs at her. Deciding that she doesn't stand a chance against him, the detective turns to leave so she can come back later. Before she can leave though, a sword passes right by her, and it looks like she has been discovered by Harold after all. She has no idea if she should run because he might have seen through her spying activities, and she probably can't lie her way out of this one, right? It seems like the sword slipped from Harold's hands by mistake, and he is scared that he has hurt the mysterious person so much that they can't move at all. Going a bit closer, he discovers that it's Yuno, who immediately apologizes for peeping on him. Harold knows that there's nothing interesting about watching a kid play with his sword, but she doesn't seem to be hurt, so it's a relief. He advises her against loitering around in the shadows, which makes her smile for not being discovered, but it's clearly a warning for her to stay away in the future too. She is clearly worried about being able to protect Erica at this rate because the boy in front of her had plenty of party and abilities. He doesn't sound like a puppet at all, and it feels like an utter defeat for the poor detective. Changing the topic, Harold inquires about Erica, suggesting that she should probably return home if she's feeling so homesick. Yuno wishes that he would be kinder towards his fiancée when he clearly spells out that he doesn't intend on being tied down by this relationship at all. Realizing that he has said too much, he leaves Yuno at her spot, but still thinks about how suspicious it is that Erica is still feeling so sick. There's something deeper behind her grief, and it looks like he's determined to find out what it is. Harold realizes that he left his sword back in the woods, hoping that Yuno doesn't take it, and runs to bring it back before it gets too dark. At this point, he spots Erica walking in the gardens, which makes him wonder if she's fine enough to move now. Maybe he should try taking her back to her room. Therefore, he moves closer to her. Instead of inquiring about her health with kindness, he ends up insulting her, which makes him feel bad because she doesn't even reply to him. He should really get some lessons on how to talk to a lady. Revealing that she can't be honest with him because she doesn't like him too much, Erica keeps standing firm on the ground without even blinking her eyes. Her reply makes him turn to leave until she stops him, finally asking if the rumors about him magically burning a servant are true. Deciding to clear up this misunderstanding, he lets her know that he killed his servant and her daughter because it doesn't make a difference, no matter how many servants he kills. The poor girl is left speechless while he continues to laugh about the murders he has done, mentioning that it's their fault for being born that way. His insensitive words are clearly too much to handle for Erika, who slaps him hard, accusing him of being the worst human ever before turning to leave. Later, Harold locks himself in his room and doesn't even play with Zen when he comes over to play for a bit. His friend can sense that something is wrong with him, but he refuses to share his feelings with anyone as always. Harold drags Zen out of his bedroom while he continues to ask questions, but it looks like a kid like him is not supposed to talk back. Finally alone, Harold realizes that he said some harsh words to Erika to make her leave, but he might have gone a little overboard. Maybe he should have taken it down a notch or two, taking her illness into consideration as well. He is evidently feeling too bad for projecting himself in such a negative light. However, he is also aware that he needs to maintain this nature without hesitating, because this is exactly what he needs to do in the future. If he hesitates now, then it will just keep getting difficult with time. Hirasawa has been restlessly twisting and turning in his bed the entire night. Eventually, he manages to fall asleep and loses track of time. The sun rises to its peak and the bright light wakes him up. He checks his clock and is shocked to see that he overslept and it is past noon. That slap for Erika yesterday seems to have caused heavy damage, and Hirasawa is still trying to recover. He rubs his face and takes a deep sigh. Everything is going exactly how he planned, so why is he still this bothered? He admits that someone playing the game would have been so happy to see the slap because Harold did indeed deserve it. But things are different now that he gets to experience everything firsthand. The rumbling from his stomach forces him to leave his bed and head towards the dining room. Norman enters the room and asks his master if he's doing okay, given that he overslept and looks extremely fatigued. However, Hirasawa doesn't waste any time talking about himself and gets straight to talking ooga booga about his business strategies. He discusses with Norman the means of spreading the LP farming method, like recruiting people from outside and increasing the workforce. His other idea is to demonstrate the benefits of the LP farming method to some merchants and then sign a contract with them for its rights. His plan is simple. He wants to force merchants into buying the LP farming method, and then the merchants will resell it to farmers. The farmers will pay the contract fees to the merchants and use the LP farming method, and then the profits will be split between the inventor and the merchants. However, to secure talented merchants that they can use to come into contact with the farmers, they can't expect much from relying on a big company. Norman comments that they don't have any connections, so no company would pay attention to them if they were to suddenly make a proposal. Hirasawa sighs and agrees that even though his, Harold's, parents have connections, they can't disclose their LP farming plan to them. Norman notices the look of frustration on Hirasawa's face and reassures him that their plan will reach fruition. They just have to get into contact with trustworthy merchants, and for that, they will share their plan with Jake. Hirasawa nods his head and agrees to this course of action. Later that day, Zen spends at least 5 minutes knocking on Harold's door, but receives no response. He becomes concerned, so he enters the room without permission. It turns out it really isn't in his room. Zen assumes that he must be out training in the woods again. It looks like Zen is quite attached to Harold because he tries to get up earlier just so he can spend some moments with Harold-sama. He notices Erika sitting in the living room all by herself. He respectfully greets her and introduces himself. When asked why she isn't with Yuno today, Erika replies that she has gone out of town for a personal matter. Zen, like always, finds it impossible to mind his own business. He asks her if she decided to stay because she has some business with Harold. At hearing his name, the smile on Erika's face fades away. Zen is too dumb to take a hint, so he keeps on yapping about how he's worried about Harold overworking himself by constantly being busy lately. Erika doesn't respond and keeps glaring at him. After a couple of minutes, Zen eventually asks her if there is something wrong. Erika hesitates at first, but musters up the courage to ask him if the reason why he thinks so highly of Harold is because he's not aware that Harold used magic to murder a servant. Zen is caught off guard by that question. He scratches his head and stutters. He tells her that there are only rumors, and since they can't be sure whether those rumors are true, they shouldn't jump to conclusions like that. Erika raises her voice and states that Harold confirmed the rumors himself. She asks him how he could be so careless about the matter when it all happened in his presence. Zen freezes in his place when he realizes that he has yet again messed up. Erika takes a short pause and then asks him how she can blindly follow Harold like him. Her conscience would never allow her to accept Harold and forgive him after he has killed a human. He admits that even though she is his fiancée and wants to help her people for her father's sake, this is something that she can't overlook. As she says that, Harold has made her let go of only one option of becoming useful to the Sumeragi family. Tears start dripping from his eyes. She eventually gives into her emotions and yells that the only thing on her mind is that she cannot bring herself to forgive him no matter what. Zen is like a deer in headlights. He is unable to speak or move. Eventually, Erika calms down and apologizes for showing unprofessional behavior despite being a noble. She wipes her face and leaves the place. Zen just stands there and thinks about how similar Erika and Harold are. Harold saved the woman and her child, despite bearing the dishonor of being a murderer, whereas Erika is trying to swallow her true feelings for the sake of the Sumeragi people. Zen concludes that, given their similarities, there is no way these two should be allowed to go their separate ways while hating each other. Yet again, in his best attempt to help Harold, he is only going to mess up his plans. He believes that since these two possess the same strength and kindness, they should be able to show their true selves and support each other. Zen decides to let his intrusive thoughts win, and he stops Erika. He requests her to follow him. Erika is as confused as us. In his inner monologue, he apologizes to Harold for what he's about to do. He claims that he's afraid that one day he will shatter into pieces, and that he cannot tolerate such a sight. He clenches his fist and decides to go against his orders. He knows that he might lose Harold forever, but he is ready to accept that if it means getting rid of some of the thorns in Harold's path. He's decided that Harold absolutely needs Erika. His plan is basically to drag the girl to Harold's room and then lock it from the outside. He smiles mischievously as he executes his plan. Sir, are you sure this is legal? He apologizes to Erika and promises her that he will be in 5. Little did he know that he does not have even 5 minutes to carry out his plan. Harold casually passes Zen and opens the door to his room. Zen jumps higher than a kangaroo on a trampoline when he realizes what just happened. Thankfully, Harold is clueless about the situation and asks Zen what he's doing outside of his room. Zen quickly takes his defensive stance as Harold looks like a furious cat that hasn't been fed. Apparently, Erika has managed to hide in Harold's closet, and her heart is throbbing like crazy as it will break out of her ribcage any time. Zen has pushed her into an embarrassing situation, and escape seems impossible. Zen asks Harold where he has been all this time, and the latter replies that he was simply eating in the dining room. Harold seems annoyed, so Zen cuts to the chase and asks him if he knows that the rumors of Clara have been spreading quite far. He claims that he went to the town shop earlier and all the shopkeepers and customers pestered him all about it. The conversation has piqued Erika's interest, and she listens carefully. Zen continues by saying that he has not revealed anything to anybody, but this can take a shot at Harold's reputation. Harold takes a deep breath and says that the way Zen was panicking earlier, he thought he might have something important to say. Harold states that does not consider this matter to be important because there is nothing that he can do about it. Zen already knows the answers to all the questions, and he's not as stupid as we might think. He still asks Harold what the issue is, and Harold finally reveals that he cannot announce to the public that Clara and Colette actually safely escaped to Bloche Village and are still alive. The time stops momentarily for Erika, and she realizes how judgmental she has been without even having any evidence. Harold adds that if by any chance his parents were to catch the wind of Clara being alive, he would become suspicious in their eyes. Zen asks the main question now. He asks her why he isn't willing to reveal the truth to his fiancée, who seems incredibly depressed over these rumors. Without wasting a second, Harold sharply responds that Erika must never find out. We know that the real reason is to avoid death flags while sticking to Harold's original storyline. Hirasawa decides to make up some reason because he knows that otherwise, Zen's kindness could lead to his downfall. Little does he know, Zen is 5 steps ahead of him. Harold states that since Erika started crying after assuring that he had killed them, she is just going to be a liability for him. He claims that he doesn't want someone who sheds tears and sympathy for people who they don't even know. He says that her kind personality is a weakness because if she were to walk beside him, she would always be hurt. Zen tries his best to save the situation and asks him if he is deliberately keeping her at a distance because he's worried about her. However, Harold is hell-bent on fumbling this woman. He states that there is no way he would get married to some annoying girl who cries at literally everything. Oh, our stoic stud. Zen refuses to give up just yet. He asks him the point of the entire engagement thing if marriage is not an option. Harold calls Zen a numbskull and explains that the engagement was bought with money. He then narrates how the miasma plagues the forest, which was pivotal to the Sumeragi's economy. Obviously, Hirasawa knows all these facts because he played the game. He knows that Harold's parents did not think twice about agreeing to the arrangement because they were desperate for their bloodline. Zen scratches his head and tries to use his brain cells that are already on life support. He asks Harold if it's okay with the Sumeragi family being utterly destroyed as a result of him breaking the engagement. Harold smiles and reveals that he has already taken measures to take care of that. When he visited the Sumeragi territory, he passed a letter to Tasuku through Erika. In the letter, he described a method to manufacture an antibody that is effective against the miasma. He also informed him about the necessary precautions. If the region is only lightly contaminated by the miasma, they can use the drug to possibly return their forest industry to normal. Along with that, he also plans to offer them the LP farming method technique. The surprising part for Erika is when Harold mentions that he talked about it in the letter too. As long as the antibody and the LP farming work out, Erika's family won't suffer from breaking off of the engagement. Now the question is Erika fine with it? Zen's action has changed everything, but Hirasawa is not aware of that. With a devilish grin on his face, Harold advises Zen to sort out his future too, because the Stokes family is headed towards a downfall. If he doesn't want to be unemployed, Harold suggests he should prepare for the worst case scenario. This is because the heavy taxation and the excessive spending are getting out of hand now. Zen starts to panic when he realizes that Harold has not given any thought to the Stokes' citizens. Harold scoffs arrogantly. Of course his plan covers everything. He has made sure nothing bad would happen to the citizens by requesting Sumeragi to take care of them if the Stokes were to fall. Tasuku is connected with the royal family, so he will act as a liaison for their support to put in good words whenever possible. How old is this little guy again? Why is he even talking like Elon Musk? After finishing the entire story, he gives Zen a death stare and promises to kill him if he ever gets out. Zen sweats from head to toe while nodding his head. His eyes keep shifting towards the closet. Harold commands him to scram, but Zen has a knack for being annoying. He comes up with a great excuse to drag this little Elon Musk out of his room so Erika can escape. Zen tells Harold that he has always had an interest in swordsmanship, so he would like to see him train. Harold refuses at first, but then realizes that he can use Zen to improve his skills. The typical devilish smile crawls on his face as he hands Zen a sword and tells him to run as fast as he can. As soon as the duo leaves the room, Erika comes out and finally breathes peacefully. She rushes towards her room while Harold's words float in his mind. He keeps thinking about Clara and Colette. Tears of happiness well up in her eyes, knowing that those two are safe. However, she decides that she wants to confirm this information and tells everything to Yuno. Erika tells Yuno if everything Harold said is true, then the source of the antibiotics makes sense. It is not possible to develop a drug in just a few days, especially given the fact that all of Sumeragi worked together to search but did not find any clinical samples. That means that Harold predicted Sumeragi's crisis many years before the engagement was decided. Erika knows that, and even he helps them and he has nothing to gain. What doesn't make sense to her is why he spent an overwhelming amount in making a drug that has nothing to do with him. Yuno recalls the time Harold was able to sense her spying on him. She thinks it is really possible for him not to notice someone hiding in his own room. Did he want Erika to listen to everything? Yuno smiles when realizing that the more you think about the guy, the more suspicious he becomes. His fearsomeness is unfathomable, and Yuno likes that aspect of him. 3 weeks have passed since the slap. Erika and Yuno have been staying at Harold's place for a month. Harold is suspecting something, but it also looks like he hasn't slept for days. His hands are tied with searching for a trustworthy company for his plan. Suddenly, Norman appears and interrupts his thoughts. He informs him that Master Hayden has summoned him. Hayden tells Harold that Erika has not been in great health lately, so upon Yuno's request, they are returning to the Sumeragi territory. Harold is obviously ecstatic to hear that news. He tells his father that he's happy he doesn't have to see her face again. Hayden scolds him lightly and informs him that he has to escort her. He is also told that he will stay at Sumeragi's residence for a while to deepen their relationship with them. Harold starts to tremble when his father commands him to get intimate with his fiancée and bag a wife. Hirasawa is annoyed until he realizes that this could be a chance for him to spread the LP farming method. Business is like this only guy's personality trait. Meanwhile, in the Bloche village, a peculiar-looking stranger has arrived, inquiring about a woman named Clara Amailer. 5 months have passed since Clara was saved. In the peaceful breeze and beautiful scenery, she is doing the laundry while recalling the day Harold showed her mercy. She hopes that Harold is doing okay, but quickly shakes off the thoughts. She has no longer any connection to the place and knows that her existence must remain hidden no matter what. She talks to her neighbor, whose son seems to be getting along really well with Colette. Mind you, this son is the protagonist of the game. She decides to prepare cookies that she baked yesterday for the kids, but she's interrupted by the same stranger. The man doesn't introduce himself, but jumps right to the main subject. He asks him if she knows anything about a man named Harold. When Clara doesn't respond, he asks her if the rumor says the boy killed a servant. He asks her about the validity of those rumors. Clara thinks for a moment, but then realizes that any response could be dangerous. She turns away and tells him to leave. However, the man promises that he will come by again. Clara joins her hand in prayer while hoping that Hayden won't do anything bad to Harold if he finds out. Meanwhile, Harold has arrived at the Sumeragi village and is greeted by Erika's father. He calls Tasuku a loser and tells him to make time for him in his schedule. It looks like he only talked respectfully when his parents are around. However, Tasuku doesn't get pissed and stays composed as in the original story. Later that day, Yuno hands her a report of the state of affairs at Stokes' territory and her analysis of Harold. Yuno admits to herself that she hasn't been able to uncover any significant leads. This only means that Harold is flawlessly controlling the spread of information. It turns out that the strange spy in Clara's village was in fact hired by Yuno. He tells her that a woman named Clara is alive and well, but refuses to leak information about Harold. Yuno decides to pay a visit on her own. Everything is going according to Hirasawa's plan. Well, at least he thinks it is. As per the game, the miasma will be dead with Protagonist liner 8 years later. However, if Harold becomes Tasuku's ally before that, he can support the Protagonist in the shadows, and it will become easier for him to avoid death flags. The only problem is spreading the LP farming method, and for that he must make a convincing proposal to Tasuku here. However, he has to act according to Harold's personality. He slams the LP farming manuscript at Tasuku's face and asks him what he makes of it. Tasuku is shocked to see the surprising profitable figures. However, he just can't understand what Harold is getting from this. Harold asks Tasuku what he would do with the LP farming method if he had control. Tasuku replies that he would install the technology and then later spread it to the country. When he says that he has no intention of monopolizing it, Harold looks satisfied by the response. He asks Tasuku to be the joint developer of the LP farming method, and Tasuku realizes that this kid is exactly how Yuno described him: smart, cunning, and business-minded. Harold wants to use the Sumeragi name to spread farming. Tasuku quickly realizes that this kid is hiding everything from his parents, and that is because they will try to monopolize this technology. Harold claims that there are 2 reasons why he chose Tasuku to be the joint developer. One is that he's easy to deal with. Tasuku guesses the second reason all on his own. Harold gave him the cure to miasma, a strategy to defend against it, and the LP farming method, just so that he could break off the engagement with Erika. There is no reason for Tasuku-ko to refuse the offer. He thinks that this way he will save his citizens as well as his daughter's future. The deal is made, and Harold tells Tasuku to start building a huge company. Meanwhile, he plans to polish his combat skills. The Stokes territory does not have a bathing culture, so Hirasawa has some time to get revitalized. He is happy that he managed to ally with Tasuku smoothly, and it seems to him that Tasuku considers him a sparring partner. Things are going so well that Hirasawa can't help but smile. Meanwhile, Yuna has requested Tasuku for an important meeting. She reveals that upon Erika's orders, she has been investigating Harold for a long period of time. Erika is also present there and apologizes for freely mobilizing spies without his permission. She admits that there was something she had to verify no matter what. Tasuku and his wife sit cluelessly while Erika prepares her speech. She asks her parents if they know about the rumors that Harold had murdered a servant and her child. Tasuku responds that he learned about this event from reports, but he's shocked when Erika reveals that there is a possibility that those rumors were false. She explains that in order to verify the truth, she enlisted the assistance of Yuno and her team. Yuno elaborates that the parent and her child are currently living in a small village called Bloish. Clara had not changed her name after fleeing, so it was easy to find them by consulting the villagers. Yuno claims that Clara refused to speak of the incident to her spies, and so she had to personally visit the village. She had knocked on Clara's door and introduced herself as a messenger from the Sumeragi family. She had explained that the daughter of the Sumeragi and Harold are in preparation for marriage. However, due to suspicions of him being involved in a murder, there are people in the Sumeragi who are voicing their opposition. Clara almost defended Harold and then paused. Yuno pushed her more to open up by saying that Harold is submitting to these rumors, accepting the stigma of being a murderer, and is personally pleading guilty. Yuno claimed that day that she had no intention of exposing the hidden truth to the public. She promised Clara that if she shared the truth, she would be able to find supporters for Harold in secret. Yuno could tell that Clara was slowly becoming convinced. Obviously, Clara gave in to the emotional blackmail and invited her inside her home to explain everything in detail. She realized that Yuno was doing everything she could to help Harold. Yuno narrates the entire story and Tasuku carefully listens. Everyone is baffled when they realize that the wagon, residence, household goods, and relocation expenses were all provided for Clara by Harold. Yuno says what has been on everyone's mind. Harold did everything he could to protect Clara's safety, even if it meant that his reputation would take all of the damage. There is pin-drop silence in the room for a while. Erika gets up and leaves the room. Her dad stops her, but she looks emotional. She says that she must apologize to Harold for taking her feelings out on him and raising her hand on him without knowing the truth or trying to find it out. The guilt is eating her alive, and she knows that Harold will never forgive her. But she wants to get this off her chest. Before she can step outside of the room though, Tasuku stops her and claims that he can't allow that. Tasuku is the real Chad. He knows that Harold went out of the way to protect Clara and her daughter, so what they should be doing now that they know the truth is not to expose his secret but to carefully preserve it. Erika freezes in place when she is told that if Harold were to find out the details have been shared with someone he cannot trust yet, he would get even more cautious about leaks and would alienate himself even more than he already has. The guilt swells up even more for her. Her father pats her on the back to console her and says that it's natural for her to feel the need to apologize. He makes her question herself if she really wants to apologize because she did him wrong or if it was because she wants to comfort herself. All this time, Erika had been trying her best to keep her emotions under control, but hearing that causes her to finally lose it. Tears stream down her face, and she asks her dad if she can be considered a good human if she cannot correct her mistake or bow down her head to apologize. Tasuku places his hand on her head and calmly tells her to become Harold's supporter if she wants to redeem herself. He tells her that Harold is too brilliant for his own good and that strength alienates him. He suggests that if she wants to make up for her actions, then instead of asking for forgiveness, she should be getting closer to him. Erika stops crying and the words "get close to him" bounce on her head. Tasuku commands her to overwatch what he's trying to achieve and to become someone who truly understands him. He cautions her that it won't be an easy task because due to Harold's brilliance, he doesn't really need allies. So despite being a fiancé, it is possible that no matter how much Erika may devote herself to him, he may never acknowledge her. He asks his daughter if she has the resolve to believe in and follow such a man. However, being a good father, he tells her that she doesn't have to answer now. She is allowed to observe Harold up close and can respond after that. Tasuku smiles and tells her that she should apologize for the slap though. It doesn't take her a second to disappear from the room. Everyone smiles and her mother comments that when the engagement was decided, she already seemed fairly disappointed, but looks even more depressed now. She didn't want Harold earlier and now she doesn't want to lose him. Tasuku comments that his daughter has grown up, and his wife reminds him that this is not the first time they are experiencing their child growing up. Tasuku comments that knowing Erika, her feelings for Harold are going to become too strong. The next day, Tasuku takes Harold to the largest martial arts temple in the Sumeragi territory. In order to be educated in all sorts of combative arts, everyone ranging from children to adults train here every day. Harold asks Tasuku why he brought Erika along. He doesn't look at her and even doesn't address her by her name. Erika looks away in shame, and Tasuku responds that Harold's today's opponent kept pestering him to bring her. Harold put on his martial arts attire without any struggles, and Tasuku looks confused. He asks Harold how he was able to do that. Harold shrugs off the question and asks him to reveal his opponent. Tasuku smiles and says that his opponent is already here. It's a guy named Itsuki who seems to be of the same age as him. Tasuku welcomes Itsuki and apologizes for bothering him. However, before the old geezer could even finish his sentence, Itsuku darts past him and aggressively hugs Erika. He tells her that they haven't seen each other in a while, and she has become so beautiful in that time. While almost suffocating her, he asks her if she felt lonely without him and that he missed her so much that he couldn't sleep. This guy better turn out to be her older brother or he would just be a creep. Erika begs him to let go of her as she is unable to breathe. Harold obviously looks annoyed. It's not like he's jealous or anything, but he complains to Tasuku that his opponent is weak. Tasuku reassures him that Itsuki's strength is absolute. Harold claims that no matter how you look at Itsuki, he is just a kid. Itsuki grins and reminds Harold that he too is just a kid. He lets go of Erika and introduces himself as Erika's brother. Not gonna lie, this guy looks like he has some screws loose and could be a formidable opponent for Harold. Harold introduces himself with just his name, and for some reason it pisses Itsuki off. He takes a step closer and asks Harold if he's sure that he isn't forgetting anything. In the glimpse of an eye, he is suddenly standing right next to Harold with his hand on his shoulder. He grips him tightly and reminds him that he is his little sister's fiancé. He intimidatingly stares at Harold while smiling ear to ear for 5 minutes without saying anything. Yeah, this guy definitely has a black belt in craziness. Tasuku rolls his eyes, knowing well his oldest child's shenanigans. Meanwhile, all the trainees in the department gather around when they find out that a duel is about to begin downstairs between Itsuki and Erika's fiancé. To them, it is a rare chance to witness Itsuki's swordsmanship. Itsuki's eyes are sparkling with passion as he tells Harold that it's time to duel. Meanwhile, Harold is his usual angry cat self, and he yells at Itsuki to not touch him and calls him a piece of trash. He admits to himself though that Itsuki has a strong grip. Itsuki withdraws his hand and smiles at seeing Harold so fired up and ready to begin. They agree to prepare the weapons. Hirasawa analyzes Itsuki and is kind of surprised to see his interactions with Erika, in which he only dotes on her. He admits the game. Itsuki was only touched upon in conversation among other characters, so he wouldn't recognize him even after seeing him. Hirasawa isn't really aware of his personality and skills, so dealing with him is bound to be a nuisance. Itsuki throws a bamboo sword at Harold and he quickly catches it. Harold swings the sword in all directions to test it and comments that this is practically just a stick. The stick is really light, and Hirasawa wonders if it's because he has been wielding an iron sword up until now, or maybe because Harold is powered up. Hirasawa takes another look at his rival as spectators start to gather. He admits that he has started to get nervous now. Itsuki Sumeragi is a character whose name isn't even mentioned in the original story. This is a world where swords, magic, and monsters exist, so it is a fact that Hirasawa's opponent is going to be strong. It's not just that, but the fact that Tasuku specifically picked Itsuki to be his skilled opponent. Harold, the most intelligent prodigy, knows better than to underestimate his opponent. Hirasawa is not confident about his skills, but he knows that he can trust Harold's overwhelming speed and superior swordsmanship. He tells himself that it will be fine as he has been constantly training in his own way up until now. He reassures himself that he knows how to handle this body. He grips his bamboo stick tight and claims that he is not going to lose. Tsuku explains the rules that these sticks are the only weapon allowed to be used in attacking the vitals, including the head and face, and the usage of magic is forbidden. There is no time limit, and the victor will be determined once one of you is incapacitated or forfeits. Aside from these rules, there will be no different from an actual fight. When both of them are going to agree that they have no issue, the fight will finally commence. Harold, being the jackass that he is, scoffs and claims that the rules are lenient, in a condescending manner. Tsuku explains that he wishes to avoid any serious injuries at any cost, and would not have made such limitations if both of them were wearing protection armor. Harold rolls his eyes and Itsuki looks a little sad. Itsuki thinks to himself that it's only natural that his father would add those conditions. He has competed against tons of adults up until now, and he is strong enough that his peers are no match for him. Since his sparring partner is a younger noble heir, he can't hurt him and cause problems. Itsuki says that it is unfortunate that he can't enjoy himself for once after such a long time. Considering his father's intentions, he believes that he shouldn't fight for real. When Itsuki claims that he's ready to provide handicap and allow Harold to make the first move and unleash his best attack upon him, Harold looks rather annoyed. As soon as Tsuku gives the cue to begin the match, Itsuki's confidence evaporates into thin air. Harold takes one step and he is like a flash of lightning. His eyes have gone blank and he attacks first with the intent to kill. Itsuki only feels a gush of air, and the next thing he realizes is that the bamboo stick is no longer in his hand. The audience gasps and remarks that no one was able to see anything. Itsuki stands motionless in his place without any weapon. Harold tells him that if this was a real duel, he would have been dead by now. With a devilish and arrogant smile on his face, he looks at the terrified Itsuki and tells him that he must be glad that the duel wasn't serious yet. It looks like Itsuki has started to enjoy this. He smiles and admits that he never thought Harold would be this strong. He quietly walks over to his bamboo stick and picks it up. The fact that Harold was able to match his form and alter the sword's trajectory caught him off guard. He knows that he could have hit him like that, but chose to deliberately knock his bamboo sword down. It's as if he's telling Itsuki to fight for real. A smile creeps up on Itsuki's face when he realizes the real agenda of Harold for seeking out the stage. Harold has been looking for a worthy rival for whom he could fight at full strength. Itsuki openly apologizes for looking down on him and asks him if he's willing to have a serious match this time. Harold responds by calling him an idiot and claims that a serious match is the only thing missing in his life. It just can't be Harold's dialogue if it doesn't contain slurs and sarcasm. Itsuki closes his eyes and smiles. He tells Harold that this time he's going to make the first attack. Harold loves the sound of that and challenges to come at him if he's fast enough to keep up. Tsuku suddenly becomes concerned and calls Itsuki, but the latter just looks at his dad with an expression that tells him not to worry, that he will keep his promise. He doesn't want to make matters worse for his dad, but he also doesn't want to let go of this sweet opportunity of seriously dueling with someone. Harold rushes at him and Itsuki is caught off guard yet again by how fast his opponent is. He admits that he completely surpasses him in speed and tries to regain his composure. Itsuki manages to read Harold's attack and pushes him into a defensive stance instead of an offensive one. Harold's eyes open wide in surprise, and Itsuki smirks while saying that Harold's fighting patterns have been totally exposed. Harold suddenly starts having a hard time defending, and his face clearly shows how frustrated he is. Itsuki smiles while claiming that it is just as he had expected. He just wants to know how long Itsuki can last. The silent crowd suddenly becomes loud and starts chanting Itsuki's name. Itsuki explains that if his opponent can't leverage his speed, their actions become more straightforward and the timing of their actions become easy to read. Moreover, with him responding to all the feints Itsuki is throwing at him, Harold's actions are even more restricted. The spectators comment that if Harold is trying to deal with each and every attack of his opponent, then it means that his swordsmanship is no different from an amateur's, and he cannot read his enemy's attacks. Harold has started to breathe heavily and is struggling to gain his composure. So even if he beats him in speed, when it comes to predicting the opponent, Itsuki is way ahead of him because he has a lot more combat experience. The fight gets more intense as the swords clash. The expressions on the fighters' face show that they are having the times of their lives. They mock each other and come up with snarky comebacks while skillfully managing their stance and trying their best to predict each other's moves. Eventually, Itsuki starts having an upper hand. He corners Harold and takes a mighty swing at his sword. Harold throws his sword in the air, which catches Itsuki by surprise. Harold turns his hand into a fist and uses it to violently strike Itsuki, who falls on his back. Everyone gasps as Tsuku signals for the match to be stopped. Harold looks down on his fallen opponent and points his bamboo stick at him. Itsuki is shocked and takes a moment to understand what just happened. He admits to himself that it is unbelievable that he just lost to a kid 3 years younger than him. He says that Harold is the type of those rivals who improve from friendly competitions. Itsuki smiles and claims that although he lost, he doesn't feel bad for him. Harold rolls his eyes and says that he will not lose to Itsuki again. Itsuki looks surprised by that statement, so Harold explains that it was stated beforehand that bamboo swords could be their only weapons. Of course, he roasts Itsuki for failing to grasp the rules of the match and makes fun of the fact that he's going to be the next chief of the Sumeragi family. Itsuki starts laughing maniacally and thinks to himself that he has found a brother-in-law and a rival in the same person. Harold throws a typical tantrum and excuses himself. He walks through a beautiful garden that reminds him of Japan. Suddenly the reality hits him that 8 years from now he is destined to die. And even if he manages to avoid all the death flags and the protagonist kills the final boss, he isn't sure if he'll be able to go back to the real world. When he realizes that he remembers absolutely nothing from his previous life, he suddenly starts crying. He pauses when he realizes that a real Harold would never cry, but it's too late because Erika was standing there the entire time. Yet again, she has found Harold in a vulnerable state. Her heart skips a beat when she sees the strong and intelligent man who claims to be better off without anyone crying alone. She wonders if he has always been fighting alone like this. As soon as she calls out his name, it's like a switch in him flips and he's back to his original personality. He asks her about what nonsense she has come to spew this time and she politely bows down and apologizes for the slap. Hirasawa admits to himself that it is her kind personality that made her so lovable to the players. However, this shouldn't be happening. She should be mad at him. Suddenly, he starts imagining his death and panics. He calls Erika horrendous slurs and says that she's an eyesore. He leaves, but Erika has made it his life's goal to not leave this guy alone. A long time has passed by now. 3 years ago, Harold volunteered to embark on a subjugation campaign. He effortlessly deals with a giant hornhead while his colleagues contribute nothing and watch in astonishment. Harold's plan is to gain experience in defeating as many monsters as possible, and in the meanwhile Tasuku handles his business. It appears that some time ago, Harold even got brutally injured while saving his comrades, but threatened everyone not to leak that information to his parents. Now that 3 years have passed, he decides to stop by the Sumeragi estate to check up how things are going on Tasuku's side. Harold is back at the Sumeragi village, but something about him is different. He may have managed to get mature after all these years. Let's see if he succeeds in the try not cussing for 5 minutes challenge. Tasuku welcomes him into the Sumeragi house, and Harold gets straight to business. He asks him about how negotiations with his father turned out. Tasuku informs him that the negotiations went smoothly. They've received an exemption on some of the LP farming methods, fees, and taxes. This is a success because it means Harold has taken another step in spreading his innovation. Harold laughs and claims that his dad has no idea that his engagement will be cancelled. Tasuku doesn't respond to that statement and looks rather concerned. He changes the direction of the conversation and asks Harold if he's alright after fighting a hornhead during the campaign. Harold rolls his eyes and complains why everyone asks him that whenever a campaign finishes. Tasuku reminds him that he has seen him turning up at the Sumeragi village multiple times due to severe injuries. Harold crosses his arms and arrogantly claims that it is an insult to him that the Sumeragi head thinks he would lose. Tasuku smiles at this midget's confidence and says that he hopes he and Itsuki can fight again. He suddenly remembers that he has a message from Itsuki. Apparently, he wants Harold to try participating in the combat tournament at Delphit. It is divided by age, so he won't be able to face off against Itsuki. However, there is still an opportunity for him to gain some new combat experience. Harold doesn't hate the sound of that. A combat tournament is generally designed to face off against human opponents, and you don't need to seriously fight to the death. He smiles and remarks that the idea is fascinating. Tasuku states that he will inform Itsuki and excuses himself to get back to work. Harold responds by telling the old man to work himself to death. Yeah, he is still the same. He realizes that it was the right choice to take a risk and deepen his relationship with the Sumeragi family. The fact that his relationship with Erika, whom he calls a major minefield, hasn't progressed at all in the last 3 years is a huge accomplishment for him. The two of them are keeping a distance, and it looks like they can't get back together now. But still, with the miasma in the Sumeragi territory, he can't let his guard down until the protagonist and his party deal with it. He tells himself that he can't feel proud just yet as there are mountains of problems waiting for him. He plans to exterminate all of the death flag sprouts that are about to rise in the remaining 5 years before the main story starts. So where is this protagonist and his party that Harold is relying heavily on? Somewhere in the bustling ocean town called Delphit, Liner Griffith, the protagonist, seems to have a bubbly and naive personality. Judging from the excitement on his face, it looks like it is his first time he went to the town. He is excited to see the enormous buildings, the crowds of people, and ships made of metal. With his eyes wide open and a smile stretching from ear to ear, he is practically bouncing on his toes. The important point to note is that he is already wearing the necklace that Harold had given to Colette, which means that the story has not strayed too far from its original plot. His electric energy causes him to get scolded by his dad, who tells him that those aren't ships made of metal, but merely bronze statues of a ship. Colette is here too, and she appears really worried about Liner and his reckless attitude. She reminds him that if he doesn't hurry up and sign up to participate in the combat, he might get left out. However, he doesn't even let her finish and runs away in turbo mode, while telling everyone to relax a little. Colette does a facepalm as if she's his babysitter. Liner's dad, Orville, is equally as frustrated as her. He tells her that he will complete the registration for his stupid kid and requests her to look after him. The poor girl looks everywhere, but that brat is nowhere to be found. Panic hits her and she stumbles on something and ends up badly bruising her knee. While many people are annoyed by her clumsiness, luckily for her, a girl extends her hand to help her out. She's none other than our very own Erika Sumeragi. Colette looks at Erika as if she's discovered a rare and dazzling gem. She is enthralled by her beauty and compliments her. Erika smiles and requests her to follow her so she can tend to her wound. Colette insists that she doesn't want to trouble anyone and it's nothing big. Erika smiles and claims that she isn't someone who could simply turn a blind eye to something like this. Colette lowers her head in embarrassment and thanks her. Erika holds out her hand and again asks her name. Colette's response drains the color from Erika, as if she doesn't have an ounce of blood and has been struck by a bolt of lightning. She never would have imagined casually meeting the girl Harold risked everything to save. She doesn't say anything though and quietly heals Colette with her magic. When Colette compliments her skills, she reveals that she is still in training. When Colette hears the word training, she assumes that Erika must be here for the combat tournament as well. Erika corrects her by stating that she is simply just an escort. She then asks her if she's here to compete, which can be troublesome now that she has injured her knee. Colette smiles and claims that she is fulfilling the same role as her. She is escorting a friend, Liner, who is aiming to join the chivalric order. She blushes while admitting that she is supporting him with all her heart. She excitedly claims that he is the strongest among all the children who live in the Bloche village. The smile on Erika's face disappears when she hears the name of the village. She was assuming that the girl's name being Colette is probably just a coincidence, but now this hypothesis of hers has been proven wrong. When Erika asks her why she lives in such a faraway place, Colette naively reveals that due to various circumstances, she and her family had to move there 3 years ago. The image of Harold flashes before her eyes, and she says that her guess was true after all. Colette is a little confused by the statement, but she shrugs it off. When Erika completely heals her wound, she insists that she must repay her. Erika tells her not to worry about it and go back to looking for her friend. She tells them that if her people have strong bonds, they eventually run into each other again, so if the two of them meet again, they should become friends. Colette panics and again asks her how she can be okay with being friends with someone like her. Erika repeats that if they meet again, then it would be a piece of evidence that their bond is real. After that wholesome interaction, they say their goodbyes while promising to meet once again. Then comes the day of the unexpected reunion. Harold is impatiently waiting for Itsuki, and when he finally arrives, he asks Harold to come with him to grab a bite. This makes Harold more annoyed, but Itsuki couldn't care less, as Defit is an ocean town and their seafood is known to be top-notch. Harold agrees to join him, but little does he know that the minefield he has been avoiding for 3 years will also be there. When Itsuki loudly apologizes to Erika for being late, Harold's face turns pale and his inner voice screams death flags. It looks like Erika isn't happy either. She frowns and asks Itsuki why she wasn't aware of the situation. Her older brother awkwardly replies that she didn't think that eating with Harold would be so bad for her. He sighs and tells them that he will only be in the way if he stays, so he's going to be kept out. Erika and Harold react quicker than a squirrel on caffeine, and they both simultaneously tell Itsuki that he must stay. Harold claims that it would be an utter hell if he were to stay here with Erika, and she knows that she will only cause trouble to him. But she also believes that it would be too disrespectful to leave the seat. The dreadful dinner officially begins. Itsuki breaks the awkward atmosphere by speaking first. He tells Harold that one can get hurt during the combat tournament, so he thought that it would be a great idea to be accompanied by someone who can use healing magic. Coincidentally, everyone in his family was busy, so he had no choice but to ask Erika instead. Harold refuses to believe that nonsense and already knows that Itsuki purposefully set him up. When he claims that there is no way he would get hurt, Itsuki reminds him of the proverb, better safe than sorry. It looks like he always has a snarky reply up his sleeve. He tells him that he knows about the whole not meeting unless absolutely necessary thing, but this dinner was important to break the ice between them. Later that day, Yuno asks Erika if she told him about meeting Colette. Erika replies that they can never reveal that they are aware of his secret unless he opens up first. She spends the rest of the day recalling her encounter with Colette. She believes that the next time they meet will be when Harold reveals his secret to her. Her delusional self thinks that if Colette were to meet Harold again, she would be head over heels for him and would confess. Somehow she has managed to convince herself that Harold, the CEO of Me, Myself, and I, would simp for Colette. She admits that Colette is a nice person, so she wouldn't mind having her as a love rival. Absolutely nothing has happened, and this girl is already imagining Harold and Colette's future babies. Meanwhile, Harold is assessing the area where the combat tournament will take place. He remarks it is massive, but his analysis is interrupted by a bunch of drunk men who are fighting to prove who is more manly. One of the men almost stumbles into a girl who seems to be carrying important luggage. However, when he's about to bump into her, Harold lands a forceful kick on him that changes his trajectory. After that, he lifts him up and smashes his head into a pot of cold water while claiming that he hopes this will sober him up. This anchors the victim's peers and they all roll up their sleeves. One of the chivalric orders units named the Cody Unit arrives at the scene. Their lieutenant seems annoyed that the citizens can't hold their liquor enough and always end up causing a scene. A huge man rushes towards Harold, clearly intending to harm him. The lieutenant starts running too in order to save Harold, but he soon realizes the midget doesn't need anyone's help. He single-handedly causes the old geezer to take a nap in the middle of the fight. There is a pin-drop silence in the crowd, and even Cody is left speechless. He asks Harold if he's alright and requests him to debrief him on the situation. Harold turns around and literally sneers at him. He looks like a bull with a fly buzzing around its nose. That's how annoyed he is. He tells the lieutenant to ask the bystanders about what happened and not waste his time. After saying that, he disappears from the scene, and the lieutenant regrets not asking the kid his name. Meanwhile, inside Harold's body, Hirasawa's inner fanboy is kicking in. He admits that he got flustered after running into Cody, and he has no clue what he's doing in the chivalric unit at this point in the storyline. Apparently, in the game, Cody occasionally joins the protagonist's party and enjoys exploiting them. He's the type of character you can rarely get your hands on. He is fundamentally a supporting character, and isn't really a bad person. The anti-death flag brain cells in Hirasawa start doing their work, and he comes up with a plan to get along with Cody so he can find out about the internal affairs of the protagonist's party in the future. The next day, the tournament officially begins. Itsuki informs Harold that he assigned him up with an alias. With a smirk on his face, Harold claims that the name doesn't matter to him. He's just here to beat people up. However, the smirk soon disappears when he's standing in the middle of the ring with a stupid mask on his face and the crowd cheering him on with the name Mr. Lord. Itsuki purposefully picked the most stupid costume and alias for him. Now, Harold is super pissed and wishes to end the round as soon as possible. He takes off his mask and looks at his opponent, Malik Makia, who is clearly intimidated by him. The noisy crowd seems to be putting him on edge. However, when his eyes land on a certain someone in the crowd, he freezes in his place and his confidence momentarily shatters. It's Colette. He doesn't have time to think about Colette right now. He feels stupid for taking his mask off. She has clearly recognized him as well. As soon as the speaker announces that the match is beginning, Harold rushes towards his enemy like a lightning bolt, and the latter politely concedes, knowing well the power gap is too much. Harold doesn't react the way a victor would. He is panicking because he knows that if Colette is here, Liner is here too. He hopes that Liner is sitting somewhere in the audience and is not participating in the combat, because their face-off is supposed to be years from now. If they encounter each other in the ring today, the story would stray way too far off its original plot. His nightmare comes true when the contestants for the next round are announced. One of them is Liner Griffith. Like Harold, he also manages to win swiftly. Harold calms himself down and tries to plan his next move. He realizes that maybe this plot isn't too bad for him. If he manages to befriend Cody and Liner right from the start, it is possible he can make him stronger than the original storyline. By doing so, it would be much easier to save the world from getting destroyed. The only reason why Liner hated him in the original plot was because he killed Colette's mother. This is not the case this time. The only biggest hurdle right now is trying to be nice, which isn't in Harold's genes. When Liner enters the waiting room, Harold calls him out and compliments his fighting style. He somehow manages to adjust one or two disses in his sentence though. Liner is as energetic as ever. He begs Harold to teach him the trick of moving fast. The latter rolls his eyes and challenges him to a duel. Liner accepts it without hesitation and promises to work his way up the ladder just so he can fight Harold and learn from him. Harold smiles as he realizes that his plan is like a domino effect. Each step is flawlessly setting off the next. The moment everyone in the audience has been waiting for finally arrives. Mr. Lord, the King of Speed versus Liner Griffith, the charismatic hero. The match starts and Liner attacks first. For some reason, Harold looks intensely disappointed. He thinks that if this is the guy who's supposed to save the world, his awful skills are the biggest red flag for him. He easily dodges each one of his attacks, and Liner asks him why he is only on the defensive. Harold calls him pathetic and lunges forward to prove that he can attack anytime if he wants. Harold's single attack causes Liner's sword to shatter in half, and the latter falls to his knees, unable to grasp the situation. He claims that he has done everything he can to become stronger, so why is it that he lost so miserably? The referee is about to announce the winner, but Harold yells that it isn't over yet. The referee insists that the participant has lost his weapon, but Harold being Harold casually goes over to the waiting room and threatens one of the eliminated participants to hand over his sword. He gives Liner the sword and asks him if he's willing to fight more. Meanwhile, Liner looks like he's trying to solve the world's most perplexing riddle. He doesn't know yet that the person in front of him wants to turn him into the strongest version of himself. Harold asks Liner why he desires power. Liner thinks about the question for a while and then admits that he just adores the chivalric order. He reveals that he wants to become a knight and save as many people as it is humanly possible to do so. He recalls that this just used to be a stupid dream of his. Then one day he witnessed Colette getting bullied by some delinquents. They wanted to sell her pendant in the market. Liner knew he couldn't fight, but still he stood up for her and obviously got brutally beaten up. Colette tended to her wounds after that, and he promised that he would become a knight just so he can protect the people he loves. That was the day she gave him her necklace. Back in the present, that memory has helped Liner to regain his composure and get back on his feet. Harold tells him that resolve is meaningless if it isn't backed by skills. It looks like Harold successfully manages to provoke him. It triggers something inside of Liner and he feels a sudden surge of energy bursting through his body. Harold instantly realizes that this is the Brave mode, a gauge move that can unleash an unstoppable mode up to 4 stages by combining attack and defense. Liner attacks him and the duo fight on equal grounds. The audience falls into utter silence, unable to believe what they're witnessing. Harold starts panting and Liner's mode starts wearing off as well. When Liner's locket falls on the ground, he is reminded of Colette. Much to Harold's surprise, Liner's mode activates again, despite him already being at the limit. This forces Harold to use his last resort spell, which causes Liner to pass out. Harold smiles and admits that Liner isn't a disappointment after all. Harold is announced the winner and Colette rushes to help Liner. Harold, being Harold, uses this opportunity to bully Colette for relying on someone as weak and pathetic as Liner. Colette is on the verge of tears and ignores Harold to take care of Liner. When the latter wakes up, he admits that Harold went easy on him, and was as if his mom was beating him up for his own good. When Liner makes a hilarious impression of emo Harold, Colette chuckles and reassures him that he will be able to defeat him next time. Meanwhile, Cody invites Itsuki and Harold to a drink and tries to recruit Harold into the chivalric order. It appears that Cody is one heck of a cunning person. He has already deduced that Harold is biased towards Liner and was only using the combat as an excuse to provoke his inner true power. Harold mocks Cody's invitation and claims that he doesn't give a dang about holding up justice. But it looks like he's cooking up an even bigger plan this time. Harold accepts Cody's invitation to join the chivalric order, and Itsuki is shocked by his decision. On their way back, he asks Harold the reasoning behind his decision, as they both know his parents will not permit this easily. Harold is confident about what he's planning to do. He crosses his arms and claims that the chivalric order often goes to places that are far more dangerous than any subjugation campaign he has been on. He also claims that his parents won't be a problem as the chivalric order is an elite unit directly commanded by the king. Harold knows that a pretentious man like his father would never cut off any opportunity to bring prestige to his family's name. Itsuki is a smart guy and he knows how to read between the lines. He asks Harold if he's doing everything for his family's sake. Harold takes a moment to respond and claims that this is a stupid question to ask. He confidently claims that he only lives for his own sake. The first thing he does as soon as returning home is reveal everything that happened in the combat tournament and how he was recruited by the Royal Chivalric Order. He tells them that he subdued a drunken brawl while sightseeing in Defet, and accidentally there was night to see it. So apparently, he is not telling them about the contest just yet. When he reveals that he will be the youngest ever to enlist, his parents are so proud that they hug him and tell him that he is the pride of the Stokes family. Hayden is so happy that he throws a big feast. After that, Harold informs his decision to Zen, Nomad, and Jake. In 1 week, he is heading to the royal capital and will enlist in the Holy Royal Chivalric Order. The Sumeragis are now in charge of the LP farming method, so Harold is a little bit relieved. He tells them that even if nothing out of the ordinary happens, he still wants regular updates about the citation here. Zen lunges forward to hug his idol after hearing such a piece of devastating news, but he obviously receives a slap from Harold. Nomad asks him if it means that their only means of contact would be mail, which takes a lot of time to arrive. Harold tells them that a late response is fine, and if there is no urgent need to report the matter, he asks them to solve the issue with the Sumeragis first. He tells them that he will make arrangements with the Sumeragis beforehand. Zen has had enough of this and finally speaks out. He says that if the chivalric order travels to dangerous places, what would he do in the worst case scenario? Harold rolls his eyes and states that there is no point in having this conversation, as he has already experienced such situations from time to time again in his subjugation campaigns. Zen knows that his questions are only annoying Harold, but he is genuinely worried as his missions are going to become more dangerous than everything that he has experienced so far. When Zen claims that simply imagining Harold dying is making him cry, Harold kicks him in his bum for imagining him dying so casually. Harold tells him that if he is too sad to see him die first, he can simply send him to the underworld first. After telling all three of them that they should scram before he reaches his limit, he quickly closes the door and collapses on the couch as it has been an exhausting past couple of days for him. He thinks to himself that Zen is such a good guy for worrying about others. The Herald in the original story was part of the chivalric order as well, so he planned to join them at the minimum age of 16. So basically, he has been preparing to get thrown into dangerous areas for a long time. The only worrying matter for him is that the plans have now sped up for him. That suddenly hits him that the game never revealed why Harold was in the chivalric order. His best theory is that the chivalric order is a symbol of power and authority, and Harold must have wanted a way to demonstrate his own strength. We are getting a little sneak peek at the personality of the original Harold. He was indeed loathsome and utterly refused to accept disagreements and failure. Therefore, Harold, who had been defeated twice by Liner, craved more power, so it was easier for him to call for Justice's deception, and in the end, he ruined his own self. Hirasawa is trying his best to psychoanalyze the character he is playing. He concludes that maybe Harold was just some battle junkie after all. Even though he doesn't genuinely desire power, he persists with the jealousy and reputation that he gains through power, and it leads him to become one of the best villains of the story. There is a knock on the door that snaps him back to his senses. One of the servants informs him that the preparations for the feast are complete and he is here to escort him. Before leaving the room, he takes one last glance at the place, knowing well that it might be his last time seeing it. It is not his real home, but he has still spent so many years here and he has practically grown all over again. Time passes by so quickly, and the next thing he knows, he is already sitting in a carriage with his parents bidding him farewell. Harold waves his hand, leaving behind the familiar and venturing into uncharted territories. Sometime later, he steps foot into the royal capital of Amazal and is taken aback by the beauty and technology. He states that he knew that the royal capital would have obviously been a flourishing place, but he thought that he would be seeing so many flying ships. He admits that he has never ridden one before either. He feels tiny in such a massive place and checks the notes again to ensure that he has arrived at the right place. He stands there for some time and soon Cody arrives in his uniform. Cody greets him with a big smile on his face and says that he didn't think that they would be meeting again so soon. Harold scoffs and says that he's not here to see his bloody face and asks if he's planning to cancel the agreement for him to enter the chivalric order. Cody realizes that Harold isn't like his other victims and he can't get cocky around this ticking time bomb. He gives him a thumbs up and winks while saying that he can rest assured he is a man of his word. As much as Harold hates this guy, let's not forget that the Hirasawa inside of him is a big fanboy. Cody claims that he would have never imagined meeting another incredibly talented individual who could rewrite the history of the chivalric order just by chance. Harold recalls Cody that even though he is the youngest ever to join the unit, there was someone who enlisted when they were 14. When he asks Cody about the identity of this person, the latter scoffs and states that there is no way Harold doesn't know about him. Apparently, he is famous enough to have his name briefly mentioned in books. After messing with Harold for a while, he reveals that the name of this person is Vincent von Westervoort, and he is currently the vice captain of the Holy Royal Chivalric Order. He is a handsome, stoic stud who looks very serious about the role he has to play. He is working in his office with his assistant and then suddenly decides to take a break. When his assistant asks him where he's headed, he asks her if there was a joint training session today with Cody's unit. Shannon reassures him that no such plan was scheduled for today, knowing Cody, he could be up to something. Well, speak of the devil, Cody comes barging into the room and casually greets the vice captain. Vincent doesn't greet him back, and simply asks him about what the ruckus is about today with a clear annoyance. Cody excitedly tells him that he is just about to start an enlistment exam for a newcomer. Vincent is already worried about whatever evil scheme Cody is plotting, but he is too tired to deal with his BS. He simply tells him to try to not cause any trouble. Cody smiles devilishly and claims that whether trouble will be caused or not is not really up to him to decide. Before Vincent can ask another question, Cody leaves while tempting him to take a peek at the training grounds today and witness something fascinating. Vincent sighs and claims that he has no idea how anyone can always be that energetic. Apparently, he says that he has always had that wildness in him, ever since birth, and Vincent believes that it can't be fixed now. But it doesn't concern him much, as long as Cody knows how to behave in public. Shannon asks Vincent why he has always had a soft spot for Cody, and always treats him kindly despite his shenanigans. A sudden influx of memories fills Vincent's head. It looks like these two have been through a lot together, and Vincent claims that he is keeping Cody's wild soul caged in this oppressive and unwelcoming place, so he's not sure if he is the kind one. Harold is waiting on the stairs for Cody to return. He recalls that in the game, Vincent indeed was the one who got in at 14 years of age and ended up becoming the captain. The crazy plot twist is that he is also a boss character who fights the protagonist at the end of the story, but unlike Harold, he remains an honest person at heart. In the game, about 4 years before the original story begins, a battle occurred at the Beltius Forest that weakened the might of the chivalric order. Coupled with Cody's retirement, Justice ended up taking advantage of Vincent after he completely burned out. The saddest part is that at the end of the game, Vincent gets defeated by his friend Cody and dies. He suddenly realized that Cody hasn't returned yet, and practically ditches his introverted butt in an unknown place surrounded by complete strangers. For some reason, the people are completely enthralled by him, especially the girls. They ask him if he's a relative of someone from the castle, and Harold almost pukes after seeing so many humans trying to interact with him. Luckily, Cody arrives to rescue him. He is glad that everyone is gathered. They greet their lieutenant with utmost respect, while Harold, on the other hand, calls him a bastard for abandoning him. Cody tells his subordinates that he brought the boy here and has something to announce. It looks like Cody and everyone under him share the same brain cell, and it's running out of life support. They assume that Harold is Cody's illegitimate son and start gossiping and crying. Harold realizes that this place is only going to test his patience. Cody scratches his face in embarrassment and tells everyone to settle down. He doesn't clear the illegitimate son's allegations, and simply tells them that they are going to fight Harold and it's going to be an enrollment exam for him. One of the soldiers realizes that this is the boy who was scouted after the tournament. Cody tells everyone to calm down and reassures them that there is nothing to worry about, as this boy is an extraordinary prodigy. Harold is annoyed, because he thought that he was already enrolled. However, proving himself has never been an issue for him, and he knows that it would be unfair for Cody to give him preferential treatment just because he's a noble. Before the exam begins, Cody informs his subordinates that if he manages to beat this little midget, he will endorse them for the next promotion exam. He states that everyone standing before him has had his first-hand experience of the harsh battlefield, so they shouldn't lose to a 13-year-old boy. Harold realizes that Cody is trying to rile him up. He notices that the look of those soldiers has changed, which means Cody knows well which buttons to press to stir them up. An evil smile creeps on Harold's face when he thinks about using this as an unexpected opportunity to test out what he couldn't at the combat tournament. He looks at Cody and tells him that he has gained his respect. Cody simply smiles at him and wishes him good luck. Standing in front of him are the elite forces that directly serve the king. Harold admits that the feeling he has in his chest now, he's never felt before. Not while fighting Itsuki or with the monsters. He doesn't think that it's the tension of a powerful foe, but whether it's a craving for victory. This is his instinct for battle. He stretches out his sword and announces that anyone who wants to lose should come forward. A man steps forward and apologizes in advance for going all out. Harold mocks him and tells him that he will be groveling before him shortly. Cody climbs up the balcony and announces that the only rule is don't die. How is this goofball a lieutenant? Harold's first opponent passes out in 1 minute and a stretcher is brought out for him. The second one attacks in anger but gets thrown to the ground in 3 minutes. Harold comments that everyone that he has rivaled so far attacked in the same manner. They get frustrated and create unnecessary openings. Harold mocks his third opponent and tells him to flail on the ground like a little fish to entertain him. The mocking and jeering angers Harold's opponent, and he creates a magic circle with his sword. Harold recalls that a blue magic circle means that this is the water attribute. He also knows that the knights only use this kind of water spell, and that is Aqua Slash. As he has predicted, the opponent unleashes Aqua Slash, and it is easily deflected by Harold. All signs of hope evaporate from the face of Harold's rival. Negating a spell can only occur by accident, and one can't detect what spell his opponent will use beforehand. But Harold is built differently, and this is because he's played the game before. The knight fires a different spell this time, but again, Harold effortlessly negates it, proving that he does not rely on sheer luck for victory. The moment Harold slashes his enemy's armor, Cody is captivated by the scene. He suddenly starts seeing flashbacks of a young Vincent. Harold is indeed just like him, a prodigy and future victim of justice. Harold claims that it is annoying to deal with everyone one by one, so he challenges them to attack him all at once. Curiosity gets the best of Vincent, and he peeps through the window to witness the enrollment exams. Vincent is left speechless, and he remarks how someone can be so perfect. Whenever the next attack comes, he positions himself in such a way that he would flawlessly dodge or block it. Vincent concludes that it's practically as if he's reading the opponent's actions, but already knows what move they'll make. Vincent questions why an outsider knows about all the forms of chivalric order. The only way that could be possible is if Harold has fought them in the past. Vincent is so smart that he can tell that Harold isn't fighting. It's almost as if he's recalling his opponent's moves. Vincent comments that he has a bad feeling about this and cannot leave out the possibility that he is a hostile force. To him, it looks like that. Chances are Harold is here to infiltrate the core of the chivalric order. He commands Shannon to gather records of all the wars that the chivalric order has fought in the past decade. A few days later, Cody welcomes Harold to the Royal Chivalric Order. He is introduced to his unit, and of course, his foul language makes them hate his guts. There are 3 people in the unit who introduce themselves as Robinson, Sid, and Irene. Harold becomes tongue-tied after hearing their names. Irene scolds him for disrespecting his seniors by not properly introducing himself. Harold states that just because they are a few years older than him, it does not make them worthy of respect. Irene almost slaps him for his impolite behavior, but Cody drags her away. Whenever everyone leaves, Harold recalls that everyone in the unit is slated to die. In the game, their death is the reason why Cody left the Chivalric Order and created his group called Friary. Harold is caught up in another spiderweb now. He asks himself if he should help them. The Beltest Forest battle is supposed to occur in a year from now. Harold can't officially join the unit until a year has passed, as per the rules. He is also afraid that preventing their death could lead Cody to lose the motive to quit the Order. In the original game, there is a storyline that cannot be cleared without Cody's help. Harold is in a new dilemma now. Should he pretend that he doesn't know about his unit's future death, or should he help them and mess up the main storyline? Meanwhile, Shannon hands over a background check report on Harold to Vincent. Vincent calls Cody and makes him read Harold's background. He claims that he wants Harold to join the unit as soon as possible, and he wants Cody to monitor him continuously. Apparently, there was a spy in the past named Nohawk, who leaked the Order's intel to his allies. Vincent fears that the way that Harold was fighting the Knights, as if he already knew their moves, could mean that he was Nohawk's ally. However, to prove his hypothesis right or wrong, he needs Cody's help. Meanwhile, Harold has been going through rigorous training and avoids his bullies to prevent himself from being beaten to death. The members of his unit forcefully make him get acquainted with them. Sid is a jolly guy who is desperate for love, whereas Robinson is a buffed up guy who is secretly a softie, and Irene just hates Harold's guts. She tells him that if he keeps up his impolite behavior, he will never find love. Cody interrupts the convo and casually drops the bomb that Harold already has a fiancé. There is a sudden uproar at this revelation, and Harold is now caught in a new hell. He begs Cody to reveal on how he got his hands on this information, but Cody has a PhD in being annoying. 2 weeks have passed since Harold was recruited. When the counselor informs him that he needs to pass a final exam this week to join the unit officially, Harold smirks and claims that he knows that he will get special treatment. He has somehow managed to make everyone his op, except for the company commander and the platoon leader. On the day of the final exam, it is revealed that Cody unit, along with the few commanders, have to subjugate a few monsters. Throughout the process, Harold will be observed and graded. At the start of the exam, they run into an unexpected monster. The commander divides the duties, but Harold insists that he will take it down on his own. He lunges into the air and burns the monster down. Their jaws drop to the floor, but Harold has become used to it now. The commander writes down that Harold has remarkable capability and seems to be getting along with his unit. While they are returning, they encounter a black fog that they have never seen before. However, Harold's disturbed expressions show the real exam is beginning just now. Harold and his colleagues stare at the mysterious blood-colored creature with amazement and fear. One of them claims that it could just be smoke, but he is corrected by their company commander that its color and movement are too irregular to be considered a regular smoke. It appears to be blowing upwards from a particular location. Cody looks at Harold and is surprised to see him in a puzzled expression for the first time. Socrates asks Harold if he's aware of what the entity could be. Surprisingly, Harold has no clue either. A creature has finally emerged that Hirasawa never encountered while playing Brave Hearts, and this is probably because of the changes he made to the timeline. Harold calls his team numbskulls for not being able to feel the creature's obvious intimidating aura. Socrates is asked how he plans to proceed with the situation, and he responds that being a company commander, it is his responsibility to go ahead and take a look. As soon as he steps forward, Harold yells to warn him. Unfortunately, it is a little too late. The smoke has been transformed into a blade and takes a swing at Socrates. He is caught off guard with his back to the enemy. In the blink of an eye, Harold uses his flash-like speed to lunge forward and save the company commander. This is when Cody realizes that they should have never underestimated their enemy. However, all routes to escape have been closed now. More smoke is emerging from the ground. Socrates thanks Harold for saving him, and the latter reminds him to thank him if they manage to survive. They analyze their surroundings and realize that they have been surrounded by smoke from every direction. Harold and Socrates are standing some distance away from their crew. Everyone is perplexed, and Harold is already in his fighting stance. He tries to slash the smoky figure, but it quickly regenerates and takes on the shape of a blade and pushes Harold to step back. The interesting part is that it hasn't attacked anyone who was standing at their place. Socrates was attacked because he stepped forward, so Harold steps back to assess their situation and to come up with a plan. He knows that physical attacks won't work, and even if the blade hits, it slips right through its body. But when the smoky creature attacks them, it seems to work. Not only does their defense suck, but they have no chance at attacking this monster. The panic has started to creep in, and Irene shakes while saying that they are bound to lose because their attacks are ineffective. Robinson asks the commander if it would be better for them to run. The only problem is that there's nowhere for them to run now. Even Socrates is having doubts and thinks that this is hardly even a fight anymore. Everyone's paranoia is interrupted when they see the bright lightning. Harold is using his magic spells and calls his team spineless cowards while stating that if they have time to be worried and they don't want to die, they should unsheath their swords. He launches his lightning bolt at the enemy and the latter disintegrates. It doesn't take a few moments to assemble its body again. The initial determination that had fueled their fight is now disappearing like a dying ember now that they know that magic doesn't work either. But not for Harold. He is as fearless and persistent as ever. And it looks like he isn't the only one. Cody claims that he can't let Harold hog all the spotlight and launches a powerful flame magic at the enemy. Even Harold is shocked to see its impact. Unfortunately, the enemy still stands unscathed. Cody laughs and launches another attack, but this time he uses water. Shockingly, a little bit of smoke disappears when it comes into contact with Cody's Aqua Slash. This is the ray of hope everyone has been in desperate need of. As soon as Sacrace realizes that water works on the enemy, he also uses Aqua Slash and commands everyone to do the same. But it turns out everything is much more complicated than it looks. Sacrace's Aqua Slash is ineffective against the monster. Now even the company commander has started to become anxious. He wonders if it is possible that the enemy is adapting to the attacks. Harold is still calm and collected as ever. He takes time to think and deduces that there is a chance that each body of the enemy can only be affected by a specific element. Socrates and Cody stare blankly at this 13-year-old. They are surprised at how mad fast his instincts are. Cody compliments Harold's fighting experience, and the latter shouts at him for having such a non-serious attitude in an intense situation like this. Harold commands everyone to bombard each body of the enemy with various magic attacks to see which spell works. Cody and Sacrace take offensive positions, whereas Lucas and others strengthen their defenses against any impacts. Wind Arrow, Flame Cram, Bolt Lance. They try everything and leave no stone unturned. The combination of the attacks of Harold, Cody, and Sacrace seem to be bearing fruit. When the smoke clears out, everyone is shocked and relieved to see that there is no sign of the enemy. Looks like Harold just saved the day yet again. He takes a breath of relief and Sacrace announces that there are no more enemy reinforcements. He asks his team if anyone is hurt. Thanks to Harold, they might just be able to reach home in one piece. After the commander ensures that everyone is uninjured, he turns his attention towards Harold, the real hero. He knows that it's all thanks to him making a plan instantly that they were able to survive this incident. He knows that he would have to be burnt bread right now if Harold hadn't saved him in the start, while risking his life. As much as Sacrace is thankful to Harold, he is equally embarrassed and shameful of his capabilities as a company commander. He claims that if he was alone with his team, he would have cost everyone else's life. Harold had warned him to take the enemy's aura seriously, but he still decided to step up and provoke it. He believes that regardless of the warning, he was close to being careless, so everything is entirely his mistake. Despite being a company commander, Sacrace swallows his pride and bows his head in front of Harold. He apologizes and states that the predicament just now was due to his own misjudgment. Harold scowls at him and says that this wasn't a misadjustment, but he shouldn't make the same mistake again. Socrates doesn't mind Harold's attitude and responds that he will take this advice to heart. Harold doesn't say a word and walks away. He knows that it's stupid mistakes like these that will cost Cody's unit their life in the future. Knowing the future is weighing down on his shoulders, especially now that he has gotten close to these people. Now that the fight is over, Cody and Socrates have a little discussion. The monster they just encountered was a type that they had never seen before. They decide to request an investigation at the debriefing. Harold thinks that even though he fought like he knows nothing, he is glad that Cody and Sacrace were able to perform well. It turns out Harold did know this creature after all. They are called the Eerie Clouds, a result of Justice's plans. They are monsters spawned from the Earth's corrosion. The fact that Justice is already here is putting Hirasawa a bit on the edge. The Eerie Clouds are supposed to show up in the middle of the story, and they have already shown up now. At this stage, the main story hasn't even started yet. He thinks if their appearance from the middle of the story is just how the game was designed, but it is possible that they existed from the very beginning. However, if Justice's plans were to hasten, everything would be troublesome for Harold's story. A drop of sweat rolls down his cheek, showing how menacing this Justice guy must be. If Justice is already here, that means that the events of the original story are speeding up, and the developments Hirasawa doesn't know anything about will happen as well. One proof of that is his meeting with Liner at the tournament. He wonders if his decisions have been too rash. In the original story, the antibiotics were to be developed by a comrade of the protagonist, and then later the Sumeragi improved it. Making these antibiotics and spreading them is the first change that Hirasawa made. The enlistment in the chivalric order is another thing. In the original story, the circumstances behind Harold's enlistment as well as his age were never revealed. It is possible that the enlistment is also a reason for the events to speed up. He shakes his head to get rid of the thoughts of the worst-case scenario. Still, he needs to ascertain the plans of his arch-nemesis, the last boss of the Brave Hearts, Justice Fruend. On the surface, he is a scientist, renowned as a prodigy. However, his true character is of a madman, who is willing to allow the destruction of the world to fulfill his ambitions. His thoughts are interrupted by Cody, who asks him what is going on in his tiny little brain. Cody might be a little goofy, but he is smart as heck. He asks Harold if he had encountered those monsters before. Harold tries his best to pretend as if he's clueless. Cody states that the reason why he could detect their weakness was because he attacked them with magic before. This is why he has been thinking that maybe he encountered some similar monsters during his subjugation campaign back at home. Harold frowns and claims that a sword is not the only way to attack. His intuition told him that magic would, and that's all. Cody responds that it is not surprising, as someone of his caliber would have probably realized it intuitively. Harold scoffs and arrogantly boasts that his brain is built differently from other numbskulls. In response, Cody messes with Harold's hair as if the latter is a baby, and they start their typical banter. Harold's nostrils flare like miniature volcanoes, and little puffs of imaginary smoke start billowing from his ears. Socrates gives Cody an earful while Harold starts planning the latter's murder. He recalls that, in the end, Cody never told him how he found out about Erica, and his secretive personality is still going strong even 5 years after the start of the story. It looks like Cody isn't completely convinced of Harold's response either, and keeps stealing glances at him throughout the journey. As soon as they get back home, Harold resumes the self-training. He believes that the time is passing in vain, and he is getting too far from getting close to justice. Apparently, Justice's research institute is located in the royal capital. In the original game, he arrives at the royal castle to report about his discoveries. He wonders if the situation where he could make contact with him is when the gatekeeper returns. He is trying to visualize their first encounter, but nothing seems to be working. And for the most part, even if he succeeds in making contact with him, he still has no clue how he should probe him about his plans. If he were to suspect Harold slightly, he would instantly kill him. He thinks about capturing him by surprise instead. The only one who could stop the Earth's corrosion is Justice himself, and there is no way he would listen to Harold's demands. His self-training session is interrupted by his unit, who has come carrying wooden swords. They look embarrassed and ashamed for some reason. Irene admits that she can't forgive herself for not being of any help the other day. The trio bows their heads and begs Harold to teach them swordsmanship. Harold refuses at first, and then recalls that these three will die in the coming year. Even though there is nothing he could do to change that storyline, he can at least help them get stronger. He scoffs and agrees to train them, but on a condition that the lessons will be cruel, and he will not go easy so that his own training isn't interrupted either. In the Chivalric Order headquarters conference room, it is being discussed if Harold should be promoted to the unit early given his exemplary performance in which he surpassed even the company commander. The reason stated for this proposal is that early promotion will help him build his combat experience and strength. The president of the unit organization agrees with Vincent by stating that he too believes that the education plan is logical, but he also thinks that everyone is being hasty for no reason. Maelstrom states that Harold is still young, and from what he has learned of his nature, he is bound to cause discord among the unit. So the old man believes that it's better to spend some time instructing him how to behave first. Vincent states that even though the president is completely correct, there is something that he is unaware of. He informs him that Harold defeated the soldiers in his enrollment exam, and as a result, he incurred resentment among some of them and is now being alienated. Many are keeping him at a distance, and he has also received reports that he is becoming a target of constant assault. It would be difficult for him to build relationships with those around him in a circumstance like this. This is why he wishes to quickly place him in a unit that does not harbor any ill feelings towards Harold, which is Cody's unit. Vincent claims that Lieutenant Cody is a highly charismatic man, and there is no other person out there who can build relationships with subordinates better than him. Most importantly, it was Cody who recruited him in the first place. When Vincent realizes that the old man is still not impressed, he announces that his goal for enlisting him in a unit is to make sure that his talent is not wasted. Everyone in the council is shocked to hear that the most talented person in the room is complimenting a kid, so there must be something special about him. In the end, Maelstrom agrees on officially approving Harold's enlistment in the unit. The meeting is suddenly interrupted by a commander of the armed forces, Harrison. He apologizes for his sudden intrusion, and claims that he was curious about this boy that everyone has been talking about. When Vincent asks him to state his goal specifically, Harrison says that there is an important patrol duty coming up in which they will have to send the boys as far as the national borders. When the council informs him that there are already people responsible for patrolling the borders, Harrison reveals that they are the ones who requested him for reinforcements. A place that requires serious investigation is Beltis Forest, and Vincent states that this is where the Starchant Stellar tribe is residing. Due to constant power struggles since ancient times, their numbers are scarce now. In order to preserve their prosperity, they continue to avoid involvement with the outside world. Vincent believes that it will not be easy to enter such a place. However, Harrison is hell-bent on entering the area for patrol. The main reason why Harrison is here is to ask if the newcomer can join the patrol. He seems to be getting on Vincent's last nerves and is told that sending a newcomer is highly risky. Harrison insists that the patrol is not dangerous, and even if it ends up becoming a lengthy investigation, he will have more time to connect with other troops. After back and forth bickering, Vincent agrees to Harrison's suggestion. Meanwhile, Harold receives a letter for Tasuku that explains that LP farming has become a huge success. Harold also receives his report card for the final exam. He assumes that every unit must have rejected him, but is shocked to see that he has been placed in Cody's unit, the one who will be fighting in Beltis Forest the next year. Another massive death flag has just popped up, and he couldn't be more anxious. And it only gets worse from here. The next thing he finds out is that they will be taking a week's break to travel to a place called the Beltis Forest for patrol reasons. Could it be that the events have sped up too fast, and this could be the event in which Cody's entire unit dies? In the game, 4 years before the main story begins, Beltis Forest is the place where the massive war with the Chivalric Order and the Starchant Stellar tribe happens. The Salian Empire's troops disguise themselves as members of the Chivalric Order and the Starchant Stellar tribe and launch attacks on both. They are the ones who become the genesis of the incident. The collaborator who guides them is none other than the Minister of the Armed Forces, Harrison. And as always, Justice is the mastermind behind this affair and is controlling Harrison like a puppet. Hirasawa knows that Justice's goal is the seizure of the experimental forest called the Stellar Tribe. It is revealed that humans as well as monsters possess matter called astral bodies within themselves. There are differences in how much a person can maintain based on genes and training, but astral bodies can be used to invoke spells. The Starchant tribe handles the astral bodies differently, and this is why they're special. The thought of fighting a real battle where his comrades are bound to die overwhelms Harold, and he runs away to the Sumeragi village in hopes that Tasuku might knock some sense into him. However, the old man seems to be busy, and instead Harold runs into Erica. Harold tries his best to get her to leave him alone, but Erica stays. She notices that he looks concerned and anxious, but doesn't probe him to open up. Instead, she just requests him to start relying more on others. For some reason, those words catch Harold off guard and hit home. He gets annoyed and calls her name, but Erica insists that there are many people who are ready to help him whenever he wants. Even though he might not consider her to be someone on that list, Erica has decided to get to the bottom of his heart. Erica's words keep echoing in his head. It looks like she was spot on. At the very least, this isn't a case that he can solve on his own. He slams his fist on the desk while admitting that he was never alone, and the reason why he was able to reach this point is through the efforts of a lot of people, including Tasuku and Norman. He realizes that maybe it is impossible for him to avoid death flags on his own, and active intervention from third parties is needed. The risk of Justice accelerating his plan is that the growth of Liner and others may not be fast enough. His plan is to help his unit survive while also strengthening Liner and his friends. If he fails in these two objectives, he is bound to die. He has now become one with Harold. He was able to realize all of these things thanks to Erica. He smiles while thinking how she could say such kind words to someone who hates her. He admits that she truly is a kind and charming girl, and it would be a waste for her to hate him. Tasuku finally arrives, and Harold reveals everything to him. The war, the betrayal, and the possibility of deaths. He claims that he knows all this because he has met Gefelt. The name sends shivers down Tasuku. Gefelt is a mysterious entity who has an incredible ability to gather every bit of knowledge in the world. Tasuku becomes convinced and agrees to help Harold. And thus, the preparations for the battle begin. The air hangs heavy with a bizarre silence, as if the entire world is holding its breath in anticipation. Tasuku's mind is filled with a blend of fear, determination, and a sorrowful acknowledgement that Harold's path ahead is filled with danger. After pondering for a while, Tasuku makes up his mind and starts putting his plan into action. Meanwhile, for Cody's unit, it is a moment suspended between hope and despair, as they brace themselves for the storm that is about to break. They don't even know that they're about to knock on death's door, and it is driving Hirasawa mad. The stress is clearly visible on Harold's face as he walks with his comrades through the barren land. His guard is up, and he is consistently careful analyzing his surroundings. Even his unit notices that and asks him the reason why he's giving off a scarier face than usual. They start teasing him for being nervous on his first mission. Robin pats him on his shoulder as if to console him and states that he has gone on expeditions many times, and the monsters that show up here aren't that strong. Obviously, it rubs off Harold the wrong way. His eyes flash a mix of frustration and disbelief, and he looks like a human version of an angry goldfish. He claims that the reason why this unit is not able to take down recent monsters is because of their excessive optimism. After calling them a blockhead and dealing irrecoverable emotional damage to his squad, he tells them to pay closer attention to their surroundings. Meanwhile, Sid and Robin's jaws hang open just like a rusty trapdoor, struggling to find words to counter the verbal onslaught that was just aimed at them. Irene comments that Harold looks like he is in a worse mood than usual, but Cody tells them to leave him be. Well, Sid has never been the sharpest tool in the shed. He's more like a fluffy marshmallow in a box of knives. Using his last 2 brain cells that are fighting for 3rd place, he asks Harold if he's salty because he just had a fight with his fiancée Erica-chan. After hearing her name, Harold is now angry as well as flustered. Sid uses this opportunity to tease the crap out of him and tells him how he knows he went to visit her during the holiday before his expedition. He claims that the duo must be madly in love to the point that even after arguing, Harold still can't stop thinking about her. Meanwhile, Harold has thought of a million different methods of torturing Sid before murdering him. The other units at the back yell at Cody's unit for messing around and not walking properly. Harold takes a deep breath and regrets that he didn't think of any countermeasures besides seeking Tsuku's collaboration. The only problem is that this unit is not taking him seriously. Yesterday, when he revealed everything to Tsuku, he told him that this was his chance to pay him back for helping Sumeragi Village. He asked Tsuku to prepare a Salian Empire military uniform with him for the next few days, and the handoff would be at the town where the two will end up staying. When Tsuku asked him what he was planning, Harold revealed that the plan was to wear another layer under his armor. If the battle really breaks out, he would show the outfit to lower the hostility. This is because if a person from the Salian Empire were to appear on the battlefield between the Chivalric Order and the Stellar Tribe, both of them would be confused as to who is the enemy. Tsuku warned him that day that his plan was dangerous. If worse comes to worst, both of them can concentrate their attacks on Harold, and however strong he may be, he is just one man. Harold, being Harold, scoffed and claimed that nothing would happen to him if someone weakling were to gang up against him. With a typical devilish smile, he states that no matter how many conspirators they try to assemble, they are still a small fry and he would eradicate all of the masterminds behind this eyesore of a scheme. Tsuku had tried his best to convince Harold to back out, but the latter's stubbornness had won in the end. He told Tsuku that it doesn't matter to him how he plans to help him, he just wants the uniform. When Tsuku claims that he didn't want to send his future son-in-law to his grave, Harold smiled and blushed before remembering that they had planned to call off the engagement. Tsuku informed him that the engagement could only be revoked if both parties agreed to the decision. This made Harold question if Erica's opinion of the engagement was different from his. Back in the present, for the first time in his life, the thought of changing himself for the better crossed his mind. Unfortunately, his process of character development is interrupted by Sid, who gets yet another death glare. Harold repeats that everyone is too relaxed, and if a battle were to happen, Sid would be the first one to die. Sid points out that he keeps talking about battle and should elaborate on what he means by that. Harold explains that the location of their patrol mission is along the national border, and suspicious eyewitnesses from the forest in the report may be the people from the Empire. Sid claims that they already have an army of 200, so even if by some rare chance Harold's theory was to be true, they could just quickly break them and end it. Harold is itching to tell them that the intel of there being 30 scouts is false, and it is all a trap set by Justice. But he shakes his head to get rid of his thoughts, and tells his unit that if they want to live, then at this very instant they must prepare to respond to any battle if one takes place. While everyone rolls their eyes at Harold's announcement and believes that he's just overthinking, Cody is the only one who looks serious, and a serious Cody is like a rare Pokemon. Sid exclaims as soon as the barren land ends that they are met with the enthralling beauty of the town that they will be staying in. It is a place connected to the Starchant Seller tribe known as Gracia. Right next to Gracia is the place that Hirasawa has been dreading to see, the Beltis Forest. The place that is destined to be colored by the blood of his friends. They unload their luggage in the town and take a break. Harold comments that Beltis Forest has a majestic and beautiful appearance, but to him it is nothing more than a luxurious graveyard. He wonders if Tsuku will be able to make it in time with his assistance and how much he will be able to get to begin with. It looks like Hirasawa has made up his mind. He claims that he has accepted his fate, but there is no way in hell that he could give up on Cody's unit's life or his own. He promises himself that they will all survive no matter what. He decides to head back to the station to come up with a plan, but it turns out that when it comes to getting lost, he put Zoro to shame. He has no clue how he came to this place and is embarrassed about doing something as lame as getting lost. When he is in the middle of moping around, he is ambushed by strange men who are dressed suspiciously. Before Harold can take on his fighting stance, one of the individuals takes off their mask and it turns out to be Yuno. At first, Harold is happy to see that help has finally arrived, but then he realizes that Tsuku just sent the best of his team to their graves. He commands Yuno to take her squad and return immediately, but she insists that they were ordered to entrust their lives to Harold and to treat his commands if they are Tsuku's. He explains that everyone that he sees before him right now is people who have no relatives or are people that have been rescued by the Sumeragi family from a living hell, where they never knew what their next day had in store for them. Yuno reveals that her life was almost lost once, so she voluntarily chose to dedicate it to the Sumeragi family. Therefore, if he were to command them to sacrifice their lives, not a single person would raise an objection. She adds that it is only natural to execute this operation without Sumeragi's intervention being detected. However, even so, it does not change the fact that the Sumeragi family is going to bear the risk. Tsuku knows that, but he has decided to support Harold regardless. Yuno bows down in front of Harold and requests him to show consideration towards everyone's feelings. Harold stands motionless and speechless for a minute and wonders if he really owes Tsuku to this extent. He accepts his help and tells Yuno that he will make the best use of their petty lives. Basically his way of saying thank you for your help. Yuno announces that this place is dangerous to have a proper discussion, and she has already reserved a private room for this purpose. Harold is a bit shocked when he finds out that even Erika commanded her to obey him, even though she has been her babysitter her entire life. Harold admits that getting reinforcements was unexpected, but it is certainly a great help nonetheless, especially if they are Tsuku's elite proteges. Harold finds out that Yuno and her squad arrived at the town before him. It is explained that, on Tsuku's orders, they were sent to the route the chivalric order is expected to traverse just before they arrived, and then remain vigilant of the surroundings until the unit passes. Harold commands them to follow the unit that will be executing a lengthy patrol mission starting tomorrow. He also tells them to promptly report back any abnormalities. 3 days pass by, and one of the chivalric units is busy patrolling the central area in the Beltis Forest. One of the soldiers notices something moving at an astronomical speed. They investigate it further and realize that 2 individuals from the Starch and Stellar tribe are roaming the area. In a matter of seconds, the duo takes their fighting stance and load their weapons. Fighting ensues, but no one knows what the conclusion of that battle was. All that is visible is that it is so gruesome that all the animals run away. Meanwhile, Irene and Sid notice that Harold has been behaving strangely. He keeps polishing the same spot on his sword while deeply thinking about something. He admits that it is impossible for him to pass the time without thinking about the Beltis battle. His comrades assume that his fatigue is probably building up from the duty because he hasn't experienced it before. Suddenly, Harold observes a bird flying over, and his expression changes. Hirasawa probably remembers from his experience in the game that this means the battle has started. He quickly gets up and meets up with Yuno and her squad. He commands them to hold on to the Empire uniform until the battle commences. Since it is risky for him to bring his uniform back to the station, he asks them to hand one over to him at a meeting location. As for the signal to notify everyone about the start of the battle, Yuno suggests that they should use a creature called Sumamomo and follow Max because of its ability to travel back and forth tirelessly. Hirasawa recalls that there was no such thing in the original storyline, and deduces that Erika must have brought it up when things were unfolding. The Beltis battle has officially begun. Meanwhile, Cody is busy putting 2 and 2 together. He knows that it had only been a few months since Harold joined the Order, but his actions up until now have had several peculiarities. Cody's suspicions arose during the battle with the Red Mist, and he wonders if Harold had known about the true nature of the Dark Red Mist from the very beginning. The confusing part for Cody is why Harold used such a roundabout approach to fight and put up a show. He deduces that this must mean that Harold doesn't want anyone to know. Another thing bothering Cody is Harold's anxious behavior during the entire expedition, almost as if he knows something bad is about to happen. Personally, he thinks that Harold is not an evil person. However, Vincent's words that Harold has the potential to bring down the chivalric order keeps clouding his judgment. He slams his cup on the desk and decides that he's going to ask Harold up front. He knows that this kid has the potential to surpass him and Vincent, so he's not going to let that go to waste. However, his plan is interrupted when one soldier comes running through the hallway while yelling that there is an emergency as the patrol unit has been attacked. There appear to be many casualties, and they are in need of immediate support. Cody runs to his unit and commands them to ready their equipment and gather outside. Cody and others are caught off guard when he's unable to locate Harold. Cody quickly reaches the conclusion that Harold has already fled the scene. He leaves his squad to look for Harold, and tells them to obey another commander for the time being. He asks around if someone left the area with a horse, and he is informed that only patrol units have stopped by the stable. The fact that Harold ran off on foot is bothering Cody, but it is also good news as it means that he can't easily catch up to him. His hypothesis turns out to be true, and he runs into him in no time. Harold gets pissed and tells him to go back to the squad. Cody smiles and reminds him that he is part of the squad as well. Cody asks him why he's willing to march into a battlefield alone and personally head off to his graveyard. When Harold doesn't respond, Cody reminds him that even if he survives, he can't avoid some punishment for disobeying the command of a superior. Harold insists that Cody should get out of his way right now, but the latter argues that he can't let him off the hook that easily. They both have a stare-down contest, and after 5 minutes of silence, Cody draws his sword and challenges Harold to a duel. If he wants to pass by, he must win. Cody admits to himself that the reason why he's doing this is selfish. It is because of a promise he made many years ago, which is why he absolutely can't let Harold die. 20 years ago, when the Holy Royal Chivalric Order was returning to the public square, the town was very excited, and among them was Vincent. His eyes sparkled with enthusiasm, unlike the present day where he carries a robotic expression all the time. He was 7 years old back then, and the great passion he ran towards Cody to tell him about was the return of the Chivalric Order. Cody was completely different back then. He had a tired expression on his face and begged Vincent to let him rest as he had to pull an all-nighter to finish off piled-up homework. He claims that he had no interest in Chivalric Order because of their strict rules and life-threatening missions. He tells Vincent to wake him up when it's nighttime. It looks like back in their childhood. Vincent was a scaredy cat but admired the order, whereas Cody was the complete opposite. Cody dozed off to deep slumber and Vincent slept beside him. When Cody woke up, he saw smoke coming out of his hometown. He woke Vincent up and they ran home. Unfortunately, there was nothing left of the place they once called home. Dead bodies were lying around as if they were never once human, and every house was on fire. The enemy attacked as soon as the knights departed. With trembling legs and shaky breaths, the duo arrived at their house, but it was too late. Vincent's parents' lifeless bodies were lying on the ground. Cody's father survived, but he gave him his sword and commanded him to run away with Vincent, or the monsters that would come after the scent of corpses here would attack them. Just as they were speaking, a vicious monster leapt towards Cody, but his father became the bait and sacrificed himself so his son could run away. Cody watched helplessly as his father became a fodder to the monster. He grabbed Vincent's hand and they ran away as fast as they could until their tears dried up and all that was left was trauma. Cody took his father's sword and almost killed himself. He stopped when he took a glance at Vincent. He was his responsibility now. He asked Vincent if he wanted a quick death or the option to live. Vincent closed his eyes tightly and admitted that death scares him. That day, Cody promised to live for Vincent and to protect him. Even though Vincent was a coward, he was the reason why in the present day, Cody understands the pain of the weak. Ever since then, every day has been a struggle to death for them. They rummaged through fields of homes that survived the flames and they ate the corpses of the monsters to survive. Eventually, they started killing humans in self-defense because they had nobody to rely on. In that process, Vincent lost his innocence, and Cody realized that the coward in him was long dead. When they were 10 years old, they had gained enough experience to volunteer as mercenaries. 3 years passed by, and every day was a battle with strangers. One day, Cody was on the verge of dying. He was up against a wall with wounds all over his body. Just when the enemy swung his sword, Vincent came in clutch and saved him. That day, Cody took a promise from Vincent that they would both join the Chivalric Order to save lives instead of taking them. Their goal was to make sure that no other kid would ever have to go through what they went through. Back in the present, Cody and Harold are swinging their swords at each other. Cody asks Harold about his plans for the future. Hirasawa wants to avoid as many death flags as possible, but Harold's mouth utters that he just wants to live for himself and that's all. Cody makes one last attempt to try to convince Harold to either give up his plans or use his help. When everything seems useless, Cody changes his momentum and manages to catch Harold off guard. Hirasawa comments that a side character isn't supposed to be this strong. Meanwhile, the Aniclimax confirmed that the battle has started and Yuno is getting anxious. Harold shoots Grand Punisher's spell multiple times to signal Yuno, and luckily she catches the hint and arrives to help him. They succeed in cornering Cody. Harold tells him to fulfill his duty as the lieutenant and save his unit instead of worrying about him. They enter the forest with the plan to split into 2 groups. Harold will expose himself as a salient soldier as a distraction, while the rest will try to capture those trying to attack the units. There have been heavy casualties so far, and Harold admits that if he had done what Erica had requested him and asked for help sooner, this could have been prevented. But he knows better than to cry over spilled milk. He is ready to turn the tide of the battle using Tasuku's help. Like always, Harold is in action. He is leading a group of hooded warriors who look experienced. He has told them their petty lives are now his property, and he will not allow any of them to die without his permission. However, they are not shocked by his condescending attitude, because he is exactly how someone told them he would be. A few weeks ago, Tasuku held a meeting in the Sumeragi village. He told his most trusted companions that the Salian Empire would be present in the shadows of this war to get the Chivalric Order and the Starchan Stellar Tribe to crush each other. Someone questioned Tasuku that if he knew this much information, then wouldn't it be better to send in the army as opposed to people like them who work in the shadows? Tasuku responded that since this intel lacks proof, they cannot take extensive action. He claimed that he would like to avoid dispatching his people as well. He advised them to take action without allowing anyone to find out that they were related to the Sumeragi family. Tasuku lowered his gaze and cleared his throat before saying that he fully supported Harold. The name made everyone question his relevance to the war. Tasuku explained that he intends to obstruct this battle all alone. The leader of the Special Operations Force stated that this behavior was nothing but reckless and that Harold should be restrained. Tasuku defended Harold by saying that he could not be stopped as he has always fought by himself up until now. The leader of the force asked Tasuku why he was going to such lengths to try and help him. Tasuku smiled and claimed that he was going to keep his secret all the way to his grave. However, since these people would be entrusting their lives to Harold, they had the right to know. He made them give their word to him that whatever he was going to tell must never be shared with anyone else, not even to Harold. He said that they all must have heard of the story that Harold killed a servant. He explained that it was all a lie. He protected a servant who would have been killed by his parents. He freely covered her living expenses and moved her into a small village isolated from the Stokes territory. Tasuku told them that the mother and daughter are living peacefully even today. The leader asked him why this was being kept a secret. If it were made public, it would be a good way to silence the factions who were against the engagement of his daughter. Tasuku shook his head and said that Harold personally didn't want it to be disclosed. If the truth were to become widely known, it would bring harm to the mother and daughter. Everyone was shocked to find that to continue to deceive his parents, Harold had burdened himself with this murder offense. Tasuku also cleared up that the one who provided both the antibiotic for the miasma and the development of the LP farming method was Harold. They never expected that Harold had been trying to make a name for himself because he wished to avoid being discovered by his parents as the one who developed them. If they were to find out, they would surely exploit these inventions. Tasuku told them Harold went to dangerous lengths to secure the intel that he just provided them. What was so shocking for Tasuku was that the only thing that Harold asked for was a Salian Empire military uniform. Harold is accustomed to being alone. He is inexperienced with relying on others. But the truth is, he possesses a kinder heart than anyone. This is why Tasuku decided to protect him by any means necessary. That was when he begged his covert operations force to lend him their strength. Back in the present, the Sumeragi force and Harold are coming up with their strategy. There are around 150 invading Empire forces. Among them, around 50 will be attacking the Stellar Tribe, which is less than what Harold was expecting. In Justice's point of view, the seizing of test subjects and establishing that the Chivalric Order attacked the Stellar Tribe is enough. If this happens, it will be easy to make the Order fall and turn Vincent into a puppet. Harold decides that he cannot allow there to be any more victims. The patrol forces from the Chivalric Order only amount to around 120 today. The fact that their team is being lured implies that their formation has been leaked to the enemy. At this rate, the real Chivalric Order and Stellar Tribe will clash. They are getting close to their destination, so Harold commands them to spread out. He puts on a mask and causes an explosion to get all of the attention to himself. The Liber Kingdom soldiers notice him standing on a higher ground and ask him about his identity. They can tell that he is not from the Stellar Tribe. Harold is angered by the fact that the Salient soldiers are hiding in the bushes. He cannot blindly approach them and catch them if he doesn't even know where they are. He decides to lure them out and unsheaths his sword. He tries to provoke the soldiers of the Liber Kingdom by saying that they will become cornerstones for the Empire's glory. The Liber soldiers are confused as to what the Salient Kingdom is doing here. The leader of the Knights asks Harold if he is trying to incite a war. Harold is caught off guard because he didn't know that they would interpret his action like this. If the fact that the Empire attacked both the Chivalric Order and the Stellar Tribe was to come to light, there is a strong chance that it could spark a war. He curses at the soldiers under his breath for not using their brains and making the situation more complicated. He knows he can't back off now that he has also made a statement to provoke them. He recalls that the one who guided the Salient Empire was Justice. If what he's doing right now is to be discovered, Justice won't get off easily. Therefore, Harold has no reason to hesitate. He raises his sword and says that everyone here is going to die. He signals to the hidden soldiers with his sword to commence the attack. Soon, arrows come showering from the sky. The Liber soldiers run for their lives as Harold tries to deduce the origin of the arrows and waits for the Sumeragi subordinates to track down and capture the Salient soldiers. Among the Sumeragi force is Yuno, who is happily kicking the enemy's butts. She just hopes that everything's going smoothly at Harold's side too. The sound of echoing footsteps alerts Yuno that they are now surrounded, suggesting a more dangerous situation has developed. Meanwhile, Harold is distracted by the Salient soldiers that he's trying to knock out. While Erica prays for Harold's safety, he is trying his best to knock out all of the soldiers without inflicting any fatal wounds. This is taking longer than he expected, because he's trying to avoid accidentally killing the people he and the Sumeragi subordinates are fighting. When everyone has been beaten to a pulp, Harold commands his force to fall back. He notices someone familiar among the enemy soldiers. He is the second lieutenant of their empire, who disguised himself with the help of fake ears. Harold grabs the lieutenant by the collar and says that it's pathetic that they couldn't tell friends from enemies, even with that stupid disguise. He demands the lieutenant to tell him everything he knows about his comrades attacking the Stellar Tribe while pretending to be from the chivalric order. The lieutenant's eyes go wide with panic, and he stutters that he's only following orders from the army and doesn't know anything else. Harold's gaze narrows dangerously, causing the man to cower. Suddenly, the lieutenant's composure crumbles completely. He breaks down with fat tears streaming down his face as he begs Harold to spare his life. With his face getting distorted with disgust, Harold releases his grip on the man's collar and claims that he's not even worth killing. To him, the man is pathetic and doesn't even dare to stand by his actions. The truth is, Harold already has all of the intel through his knowledge of the original story. This questioning was just a front, and all he needs now is to get this man to testify at the trial. His train of thought is interrupted by one of his men, who barges in while yelling that they have an emergency. They have confirmed sightings of enemy reinforcements. There are roughly 200 of them, and they are invading the Stellar Tribe's territory. The first thing that comes to Harold's mind is the well-being of Yuno, and, as expected, it's not looking good for her. She is battered and wounded. The lifeless bodies of her comrades are lying beside her. Although she is shivering from pain and fear, the only expression on her face is anger. The leader of the enemy's force calls her stubborn trash that must immediately be dealt with. We are taken back a few months when Erica found out about the existence of the servant mother and her daughter. The suspicions towards Harold could not be eliminated. Yuno has a sad backstory. She was an orphan who was living in poverty in some slum quarters when one day some people saw a certain talent within her. They drilled strengths and technique into her and eventually gave her various jobs. Amongst them was to sell the whereabouts of a Stellar Tribe secret village. She asked her superiors why that village was destroyed, but they told her that their job was only to kill and obtain intel. She was told to cast away any sentimental feelings. She failed her mission to assassinate an important target of the Sumeragi village. In return, the Sumeragi family rescued her, and it was there that she finally noticed the existence of all the innocent lives that she had driven to their deaths. On every mission, Erica would command her to return alive. She knows that Harold knew about her past as well as this battle. She believes that making her suspicions of him may have been his way of granting her an opportunity to stand on his battlefield. The only thing she knows for sure is that this battle is her atonement to the Stellar Tribe. There is no way she would ever allow the sentiments from Harold for sending her here to be spoiled. As she thinks of all of that, she slowly starts to get up while pointing her sharp dagger at the enemy. She knows her situation is critical and that she might not be able to keep her promise to Erica and Harold, the promise of returning safe. But she is not going down without a fight. She trembles with fear, but she stands her ground. The enemy's leader is utterly pissed by the defiance and disobedience in her eyes. He claims that it looks like she has no idea what the circumstances are. He gives her a chance to stop resisting and run away, but she simply smiles and responds that resisting until the bitter end is the mission that she was entrusted with. The man unsheaths his sword and swings it at her. Just when she's about to be decapitated, Harold intervenes and blocks the attack with his sword. Yuno's eyes light up with hope and respect as she witnesses Harold arrive to her rescue. The head of the reinforcements is annoyed that these people keep coming out one after another. He asks Harold if he's a salient soldier, why is he getting in his way? Harold, like always, gives a sassy response. He says that the old man must be a laughingstock if he thought that he would be his comrade in this situation. To add insult to injury, he remarks that the old man's brain must be puny compared to the size of his body. Harold gets the response that he was expecting, and the old man raises his arm to swing his sword. Spotting the perfect opening, Harold kicks the opponent in his private parts. His comrades refer to him as Master Litzelt. Litzelt needs to take a pause to regain his composure and recover from the damage. Meanwhile, Harold asks Yuno if her companions are dead. With saddened eyes, she responds that some of them are seriously injured. Harold throws a healing item towards her and commands her to heal everyone even if she has to use all of the potion. Yuno says that she first wants to treat Harold's injuries, and he obviously shuts her up. He tells her to stop bothering him and to take her comrades to retreat as quickly as she can so he doesn't have to look at their pathetic states. Every time he's being harsh, he is actually trying to help someone. Yuno reminds Harold that it is practically impossible to escape from this place, as they have been surrounded on all sides. Harold looks at the enemy soldiers and states that he doesn't expect these eyesores to perform well, so they're not much of a threat. Litzelt challenges him to try if he thinks he can do it. Harold gladly accepts the challenge and lunges into the air. Litzelt and his men watch with their mouths open as Harold disappears mysteriously. He lands behind their backs and knocks them out before they can even tell what hit them. Yuno is shocked to see that Harold has become even faster. She wonders just how powerful he is. She uses the time bought by Harold to treat her comrades. Litzelt feels absolutely humiliated and retorts to using his spells. He activates a spell called Flame Burst and launches wave after wave of fire at Harold. Any average human would have been blown away into bits and pieces, but not this main character. Harold reappears unscathed from the flames. However, Litzelt is one wretched human. He redirects his flames towards the soldiers that Yuno is healing, and fires again. He claims that these defective soldiers are like incompetent pawns that will always result in bad moves no matter how you play them. Somehow, Harold manages to arrive in the path of the attacks on time, and deflects them with his sword. Litzelt notices the shocked expression on his face, and asks him what is the issue in disposing of trash that would only serve as decoys anyway. After a short pause, Harold agrees with Litzelt's statements, and claims that there is nobody more troublesome to deal with than the incompetents. Therefore, he believes that they should be abandoned. He then clarifies that he is talking about Litzelt and his men. Litzelt's pride is now hurt beyond repair, and he lifts his sword while claiming that he will torture Harold to death. Harold takes another look at his fallen and wounded comrades, and concludes that Litzelt is the type of man that he cannot possibly let off. He rushes towards Litzelt, and the latter immediately activates his Flame Burst spell. After that, he opens a portal and fires millions of spears at him, followed by a dance of lightning bolts. Litzelt does all that without breaking a sweat. Harold wonders how he's firing off this many spells in no time, and he's even predicting his movements to fire at him. When Harold realizes that he can't close the distance while relying solely on his speed, he decides to create an opening with magic. At the same time, Litzelt fires an opposing spell, and both of the attacks deflect each other at impact. Litzelt lets out a villainous laugh and claims that he is much better in accuracy and might, so it is 1,000 years too early for Harold to defeat him. This time, Harold tries to penetrate Lizet's attack head-on without dodging it, and ends up taking a critical hit. Litzelt is caught by surprise and asks Harold if he wants to keep going, and repeats that he won't be able to beat him. Not in this life, at least. Harold murmurs a couple of cusses at Litzelt, wipes off the blood on his face, and claims that he will chop his head off. Being as rotten to the core as he is, Litzelt fires his spears again at the wounded soldiers that Yuno is treating. Harold uses his dust storm to redirect most of them, but is caught off guard when he realizes that there are more of them. There is only one option left for him to do: use his body as a shield. Yuno closes her eyes after watching the spears coming at her at full speed. When she looks again, she finds Harold standing in the middle with multiple tiny blades in his body. Harold takes out each of the blades with his bare hands. His rational sense of thinking has become blocked by his intent to kill. He has started to see red, and the only thing on his mind is killing Litzelt. He suddenly catches himself in his tracks and recalls that his mission was only to stop Litzelt. What was this monstrous feeling of murder just now? That is when he realizes the real evil. Harold has started to take him over gradually. The truth is, he was always there, ever since the first day he woke up in the storyline. No wonder he's got such a foul mouth. The reason why he was able to reenact the events of the game was because Harold was always in control. He realizes that eventually one of them will vanish in this timeline, or maybe Kazuki and Harold will become a hybrid character. However, he doesn't care about death right now. If Harold really exists within him, he asks him to lend him his powers, because he is getting harshly injured too, and is obviously furious at Litzelt as well. The rain of blades stops, and the dust clears. Harold is still standing firm on his feet, but now he has a different look in his eyes. Litzelt is so impressed that he gives him the option of becoming his subordinate after apologizing. Harold responds that he would rather die. He commands Yuno to leave with the others at once. She heals Harold and states that Erika will never forgive her for what she's doing. Harold wonders what Yuno means by this. The battle officially starts, and Harold decides to use his special technique to beat this guy. He jumps in the air again, and Litzelt comments that it is a foolish move as he cannot move his body freely up there. He fires his spears again, but his jaw drops to the floor as he witnesses Harold flawlessly dashing through the air. This move turns the tide as it puts Litzelt on the edge. This is something he never could have predicted. He effortlessly dodges every blade and lands on the ground in front of Lislet. The duo engage in a 1v1 sword fight that ends up with Harold landing a magnificent dropkick on Lislet's head and crushing him into the ground. From the looks of it, Lislet must have broken at least 205 bones in his body. Harold sits down to catch a breath, and it looks like this technique has taken a toll on him as well. He takes his sword and is about to slash Lislet's sword when his friend Irene, Sid, and Robin arrive with Cody. They all give him a judgy look, so he tries to explain the entire scenario. However, he passes out mid-sentence from exhaustion. For the first time in the entire storyline, we finally meet Justice, who is intrigued by Harold and wonders if he will be willing to work for him. His laugh echoes through the room when his subordinate informs him that their plan is almost in the final stage. In the royal capital, Amazial, everyone has gathered in the castle. Erica is also present there and is being accompanied by Yuno. She wonders if today is the day she will be able to see Harold. About a month has passed since the Stellar Tribe incident, but Erica isn't permitted to meet Harold. He was involved in an incident that could be framed as sparking up a war, so it will take time to prove his innocence. Yuno explains to Erica that Harold was wearing a uniform of the Empires, so it would not be unusual for him to be suspected of being a spy. Erica knows that there were a significant number of Sumeragi servants who were injured in battle at Beltis Forest, and yet the reason that they were able to return alive was that Harold risked his life to allow Yuno and the others to escape. Erica lifts her head with determination in her eyes to convey her gratitude to Harold for saving her people. She knows that he will probably respond in a sassy way and say that he does not want her gratitude. There is something else that she wants to confirm by physically meeting him, and that is his safety. She confidently walks towards the gate and Yuno follows her. She greets Lowry, who is standing at the gate. As soon as he sees her, he knows exactly what she's here for. The way he sounds annoyed shows that this scene has happened many times before, but Erica refuses to give up. Lowry lets her know that he cannot allow her to see him because he has a position to uphold. Erica's expressions change suddenly, as it looks like she's about to tear up. Cody interrupts the conversation and scolds Lowry for bullying an innocent little girl. When Lowry tries to defend his stance on the matter, Cody tells him to calm down as he's only joking around. He obviously knows Erica's name as Harold's friends are always teasing him about her. He introduces himself to Erica as Harold's direct superior. Erica bows her head in respect and states that it is an honor to meet him. Cody panics and claims that this should be his line as she is the daughter of an esteemed village chief. He tells her that he has heard all about her from Harold as he always boasts about having a cute girlfriend. Even Harold from an alternative universe wouldn't say this kind of cheesy stuff because of how much pride he has. Erica freezes in her place momentarily, but then quickly says that this could only be a lie. Cody laughs awkwardly and admits that he did make it up. But he reassures her that he truly is Harold's superior and gives her the good news that he thinks it will be possible for her to speak with him as he will be free later. Lowry tries to knock some sense into Cody, but he claims with a huge smile on his face that he will take responsibility for everything. Erica thanks him and Cody winks at her before leading the way. They enter a hallway and Cody requests them to take a seat in the living room. He excuses himself after saying that he will brew some tea and apologizes to Erica that a nobility like her has to sit in such a cramped place. However, Erica's face shows that she couldn't be happier now that she is finally going to meet Harold. Yuna hasn't said a word and Erica knows why that is. She made contact with Cody, and although he did not see her face, he will likely recognize her by voice. Yuna whispers that they should avoid talking here, and Erica agrees. Time passes by, and they start wondering why Cody is taking so much time. Erica peeks out of the window and notices that some of the boys are fooling around while doing the laundry. She wonders if this is the place where Harold is staying, and he must be doing the laundry as well. She imagines him washing clothes with his typical "I'm the alpha here" expression. The cute scene makes her chuckle, but then she shakes her head to snap herself back to reality. It's only natural for him to be doing laundry, as it's his job. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door. It could be Cody, but for some reason, Erica knows that it's not him. And when the person says that he's coming in, it confirms Erica's suspicion and her heart starts racing. It's Harold. Their eyes lock for a moment, and Harold looks equally surprised to run into her. They keep staring at each other until Erica starts the conversation. She says that she heard he was injured, but it is reassuring to see that he is in good health. Harold could say thank you, but instead he chooses to say that he's sorry for disappointing her for not being injured enough. He then proceeds to sit on the couch with his leg over the other and his arms crossed as if he owns the entire castle. He asks her what she wants and why she's here. Erica sits on the couch in front of him and says that she came to confirm his well-being and extend her gratitude for the matter. Harold scowls and says that this is too idiotic for him to handle. Erica apologizes to him for taking up his time, but repeats that she would really like to thank him for what he did for the people of Sumeragi. After a short pause, Harold asks her if this is all that she wanted to say. Erika panics and says that there is something else as well. When Harold stares at her while waiting for her to respond, Erika becomes flustered and changes her mind. Harold gets up from his seat and claims that he has no reason to stay and look after her. Before he leaves, Erika thanks him for sparing some of his valuable time. Harold stops and looks at her before saying that if she understands that much, then she should stop bothering him. He tells her to contact him formally next time instead of employing a suspicious man, aka Cody. Erika looks embarrassed as she says that she will always do as he says. However, she stops mid-sentence when she notices him raising his hand. As narcissistic and sadistic as he is, we can't expect anything decent out of him. But this time, he actually surprises Erika by giving her an adorable head pat. Her expressions look as if the purpose of her life has been completed. Harold tells her that her scolding was somewhat helpful, so he will give her some credit. More importantly, he addresses her with her name. The entire interaction not only causes Erika to turn into a tomato by how flustered she is, but she actually starts crying due to overwhelming emotions. This was the first time he touched her and treated her like an equal human being. I mean, it's the bare minimum, but by Harold's standards, it's a huge milestone in their relationship. Harold takes a breath of relief after he leaves the room. Not surprisingly, Cody is standing outside as well, and looks a bit disappointed that Erika and Harold didn't flirt a bit longer. Harold gives him the "I will skin you alive" look and tells him to stop being so nosy. Cody might just be the only person who is not affected at all by Harold's cold attitude. He says that he wasn't being nosy as Erika has been waiting for him outside the gate for 2 weeks non-stop. Harold makes a fist and reminds him that it's not like he's under house arrest because he enjoys it. When Cody tells him that his punishment is going to be decided today, Harold stops walking and asks why he wasn't informed about that. It's not surprising at all when Cody makes a stupid face and claims that he forgot to tell him. Harold directs a fatal kick at Cody, who dodges it and lands on the pillar behind him, leaving huge cracks. Cody reassures Harold that he has already explained everything to the Deliberation Council. He is confident that Harold's penalty will be lessened because he crushed the Major General of the Empire, and as a result, he reduced the casualties on the side of the chivalric order. As soon as Harold hears those lines, he immediately senses a major death flag. Their conversation is interrupted by a middle-aged man, whose dress-up shows that he is not an ordinary individual. But still, Harold being Harold calls him a bastard and tells him to introduce himself. The man looks unamused and claims that he is from the Deliberation Council. He asks why Harold isn't under house arrest. Harold rolls his eyes and says that he had a minor business to tend to, but now he will be heading back to the house. The council member tells him that there is no longer any need for him to head back to his house. He turns around and asks the man what he means by that. Is his penalty completely eliminated? Turns out it's quite the opposite. Without changing his blank expression, the man pulls out a paper that reads that Harold is suspected of being a foreign spy as well as a traitor who concealed the details about the planned attack by the Empire's army. It also says that Harold caused serious casualties to the chivalric order, so he has been sentenced to decapitation. His head is now going to be chopped off for literally helping out everyone standing in the room right now. Harold stares in horror as he realizes that the death flag has come to life. Cody, who was reassuring him about the reduced penalty about a minute ago, is now in a state of panic. As the council members take Harold away, Cody tries to stop them. He is told to stay back, as this is an official judgment from the Deliberation Council. It will be carried out 1 week later. Until that day, Harold will be locked away in the Deliberation Council's dungeon. He is told to follow them, and Harold simply does as he's told without protesting. The stairs to the dungeon look never-ending. With every step he takes, Harold probably has the memories of his life flash before his eyes. When they finally arrive, they lock him up in the cellar and chain his hands and feet. Harold sits in the dark with his head lowered, probably contemplating his next strategy. After some time passes by, he hears footsteps approaching his cellar. A man claims that he developed these chains to prevent the prisoners from escaping, but it doesn't look like Harold is the kind of uncivilized man that would try to break out of jail. The man asks Harold how he's feeling. It takes Harold one look to identify who the man is. He is Justice Freund, who is surprised to find out that Harold already knows him. Justice pretends that he doesn't know what Harold is here for. He extends his arm out to him and invites Harold to join him if he doesn't want to sit here and await his death. It looks like everything has been carefully orchestrated by Justice to make Harold join his cause, but Harold may be the one who was one step ahead. After hearing the offer, Harold smiles as if everything is going on exactly as he had planned. The second deliberation takes place, and according to the final judgment, Harold's beheading shall be temporarily placed on hold and he will be sent to the National Astral Research Institute. He is told that as long as he adheres to the condition of providing voluntary service at the Research Institute, his previous judgment will be rendered invalid. Harold doesn't give any reaction to the news, although others take a sigh of relief. They wonder if this is happening because Tasuku, Sumeragi's chef, appealed for a second deliberation. Harold asks Tasuku what he's trying to do by saving him at the very last moment. Tasuku gives him a simple response and states that he believes in his innocence. Harold mocks Tasuku for pretending as if he knows everything, even though he was being used by him at the battle. As Justice watches from higher ground, Harold announces that this is a good opportunity for him to declare once again that he has no intention of marrying Erika, and the engagement between the Stokes family and the Sumeragi family is now void. Erika simply stands and watches as Harold shouts the most hurtful words and is taken away by the council members. The news spreads out that a foul child's beheading has been dismissed. The Stokes and Sumeragi had raised objections to the initial judgment, so a second deliberation was held. Justice introduces Harold to his new colleagues at the Astral Research Institute, and 5 years pass by. Time has led to the story of brave hearts. He has reached the very moment preceding the original story's beginning. Harold has grown up and looks a bit mature, but let's see if his personality has matured as well. At the mountain-based village, Adis, we meet a new character named Lifa. She has been scammed by a group of mercenaries who promise to go to the snowy mountains of Gullion, which is known to be the nest of the countless monsters. However, they fled with the money she paid in advance as soon as they arrived in this town. She is complaining about her situation when Harold steps into the room and the entire room falls silent. Lifa asks about the identity of this man, and another girl named Elle explains that he is Harold Stokes, nicknamed the Night Killer. He is known as the country's preeminent swordsman. Lifa pretends that she is too cool to care, and then proceeds to ask if Harold is strong. Elle says that he was strong enough to take on and defeat several dozen elite members of the chivalric order unscathed. That strength is nearly the same as Vincent's, the current captain of the chivalric order. Lifa thinks that the most logical thing to do right now would be to approach Harold and ask him to climb the snowy mountains of Gullion with her as her escort, as he is quite talented with the sword. Harold asks her why a little girl like her wants to climb those mountains. She explains that an ice dragon den exists on those snowy mountains, and she would like to gather data on those creatures, and if possible, samples as well. Everyone's jaw drops at that piece of information. Harold looks a bit shocked as well, but claims that he is not obligated to accept her offer. Lifa says that he doesn't have to, but she will find another person. When Harold says that no one would sign up for this suicide mission, she says that she must carry it out no matter how long it takes. Harold takes a deep breath. He only came here to have some lunch, but wherever he goes, another death flag casually pops up. For 5 years, he has been the hands and legs of justice, the extremely dangerous character in this game who will try to destroy the world. Harold is trying to be his subordinate while probing his true intentions. He never thought that he would encounter Lifa, a future member of the Protagonist party, like this. In the original story, she helped develop the antibiotics for the miasma that contributed to Sumeragi's salvation. The place where she and the other protagonists meet is her hometown. Harold concludes that the better plan would be to take up her offer and escort her so that she can quickly return home. He plans to make the protagonists assemble as quickly as possible so they can work against Justice's master plan, while avoiding his own death flags. Harold tells Lifa that he will help her if she accepts all of his conditions. Lifa is overjoyed, but her celebrations are interrupted by Elle, who requests the duo to let her accompany them as well. The trio arrive at the snowy mountains of Gullion Gateway the next day, but they are stopped by the soldiers who say that it is hazardous beyond this point. Harold shows them his permit and commands them to give him a set of camping gear. The people immediately recognize him by his foul mouth and open the gates. Lifa makes a disgusted face, and Harold punches himself as a punishment for being rude for no reason. On their way, Lifa asks him why he's called the Night Killer. Harold explains that people do this to mock him. He once saved some soldiers who were nearly wiped out by a monster attack. However, some people misinterpreted the stories that the survivors shared. Harold claims that he couldn't care less, as these people are idiots who can't evaluate the truth behind stories. Elle asks him what happened 5 years ago, and the old angry bird Harold makes a comeback. Their conversation is interrupted by a pack of white wolves, as this area is their territory. Lifa uses her magic trick and throws explosives at them. She feels really proud of it until Harold calls her equipment toys. She lashes out at him, but is caught off guard by another pack of wolves. She covers up her ears out of fear and begins shouting. When she opens up her eyes again, every wolf has been slashed by Harold in mere seconds. He scowls at her and says that if she wants to die in vain, she should do it somewhere else. Lifa isn't offended by that remark, but deeply agrees with it. She knows that she has been overwhelmingly misguided by her resolve. She knows that she can't compare herself with Harold, who has faced countless realities up to this point. They camp here for the night. Elle reveals to Lifa that the reason she joined is because she is curious about Harold's past life. Every public information about him is just another rumor. As Elle gossips about Harold, Lifa realizes that he is the absolute worst scum according to the stories. Elle states that there was no proof that Harold was a spy of the Empire. She believes he was wearing their uniform for other reasons. She also thinks that the capital punishment is simply too strict just based on suspicion, especially if it's being given to someone from a noble family. Even if he was a spy, they would have extracted info out of him instead of just killing him. Elle reveals that she also met Cody a few years back at the bar. She pretended to be a journalist who believed in Harold's innocence. Cody, who was drunk past his limits, narrated everything from A to Z. He reminisced about his time with Harold, and said with a proud smile that this little kid was an idiot who never reflected on himself. 5 years ago, he barged into Vincent's office and asked him the meaning behind Harold's execution order. Vincent claims that he didn't agree with it, but someone seemed to have bribed the council. False narratives have been spread everywhere, and everyone wanted Harold dead. Cody approached Erica as the last hope to save Harold. Cody believed that the deliberation was carried out with an execution in mind, and his documents were never reflected on. Erica reassured Cody that her father would use his connections to call for a second deliberation. Meanwhile, the plan was for Vincent to handle the captain of the council and Cody to track down the person behind all of this. Cody runs into Harold's old colleagues and they ask him if Harold was really a spy. Cody looks a bit disappointed in them for not believing in their friend, but then realizes that it's not their fault for not being able to understand Harold's complicated personality in just a few months. With his sparkly puppy eyes, Cody approaches his friend, who works as a company commander. He requests him to invite out Pharrell and claims that he isn't particularly acquainted with him. His friend, Walsh, doesn't fall for his tricks and straight out asks him what he's planning. Cody joins his hands together out of desperation and begs him to not ask anything from him at the moment. Cody says to Walsh that he should just think of this as doing his brother a favor, as they are part of the same team. In return, Cody is willing to pay for the drinks. Walsh takes a sigh. Inviting Pharrell for drinks is easy for him because he meets him often. He gives in to Cody's consistent stubbornness and the latter jumps in excitement. He leaves to head for his usual patrol and tells Walsh to meet him at the usual bar. Next, he meets almost every citizen that he has an influence on, because they are his only hope in finding out the source of Harold's ill repute. He suddenly realizes that he's getting late and rushes over to the bar. He has already arranged a setting with the bar's manager. He says that it is for a top secret internal inspection, and in exchange for his favor, Cody will pay him next time for every bit of money that he will lose from closing early today. Another request he has made is to keep the table behind him vacant. Soon, Walsh walks in with Pharrell. Both are dressed casually. Cody finds the perfect spot to eavesdrop on their conversation without getting caught. Walsh distracts Pharrell from noticing Cody by striking up a random conversation. They talk about how it's been a while since they last drank together. Walsh asks Pharrell about his wife Cynthia, and the conversation drifts away to another topic as the duo gradually gets drunk. With the night at its peak, Cody gets up from his seat and Walsh uses this as a signal to go to the bathroom. They enter the kitchen, where Cody reveals that since it looks like Walsh has gotten him nicely drunk, it's time to begin the operation. Walsh is confused because he thought his role in all of this ended when he invited him out for a drink. Cody smiles and claims that it's not that complicated and he just wants to ask him some questions. Cody spikes Pharrell's drink and tells Walsh that after Pharrell is finished drinking this glass, he should start his interrogation. Walsh is surprised because it goes against his values and code of ethics. He asks Cody about the powder and he replies that it's just an ordinary truth serum so that Pharrell might cough out some intel. Cody signals the manager to clear out the bar. Walsh asks him one more time if he is really willing to go this far. Cody looks at him with a serious expression and states that one of his subordinates is going to be beheaded from the sentence and he wants to find out the truth from everyone involved in the deliberation. Walsh looks a little annoyed when he realizes that the matter is about Harold again. He claims that no matter what Cody is going to do, he will still never be able to overturn the sentence. Cody admits that he also believes that all of his efforts are going to be in vain in the end. But there is also the possibility that this will become a massive burden for Cody to carry for the rest of his life. He reassures Walsh that he can back out if he wants to, and will not be held responsible. Walsh starts feeling guilty and says that he can't just keep quiet and let his best friend meddle with serious stuff. He says that he doesn't know what Cody has with Harold that is pushing him to go this far, but he's willing to ask Pharrell about the deliberation. Seeing Walsh's reaction makes Cody all emotional, and he says that he's lucky to have such a good friend. The statement makes Walsh cringe so hard that he decides to just go home. Cody hilariously begs him to stay and complete the job. Meanwhile, Pharrell is probably wondering if Walsh has constipation, as he hasn't returned from the restroom in a while. Walsh finally arrives at the table, and claims that he also picked up some extra drinks. Pharrell chugs down the entire glass, and Walsh watches him nervously. As the duo sits in the empty bar, Walsh finally musters up the courage to ask him why things have been so frantic recently. When Pharrell doesn't get his point, Walsh clears up by asking him how things ended up so badly when he's commanding a company in the expedition. When Pharrell doesn't respond, Walsh takes another step and asks him about the new soldier who is being sentenced to capital punishment. Pharrell lowers his head and says that he didn't see anything firsthand. However, according to the reports, he disobeyed a superior officer and deserted from battle, and was suspected of being a spy for wearing a uniform of the Empire's. Walsh pretends as if he's thinking hard. He acts confused and says that capital punishment must be the right decision for deserting from battle and being suspected of being a spy. Pharrell starts pulling his hair out of frustration and says that capital punishment wasn't decided. It's just that the council considered Harold dangerous, so he needed to be killed. The worst part is that whoever this person is has been threatening Pharrell's wife Cynthia. He was told that Harold couldn't stay alive because he might rebel. When Walsh probes Pharrell to reveal the identity of this mysterious man, he goes berserk and throws the drink in his hand. He pulls out his drink while shouting that his wife is pregnant. Walsh and Cody run towards Pharrell, but it's too late. He has already lost his sanity. He starts banging his head furiously on the wall until his vision is covered by blood. Cody and Walsh try to hold him back, but it's of no use. Pharrell remains in his berserk state until he passes out. The duo take a breath of relief when they check his pulse and find out that he's still alive. They request the manager, who is equally as shocked, to bring bandages and cloth. Cody clarifies that this wasn't the side effect of the truth serum, and no matter how you look at it, it didn't seem normal. It was practically as if Pharrell had been possessed by a demon. 5 years have passed since that incident, and Elle is narrating the story to Lifa. Elle claims that she believes every word that the drunk Cody had told her that night. Lifa looks a little spooked and asks Elle to continue. Unfortunately, this was all that she managed to hear. Elle believes that Harold's execution was placed on hold under the condition that he would assist as a test subject for an experiment that the Research Institute is conducting. Lifa is gripping her pillow tightly after hearing Harold's stories and rumors. Elle notices her anxiety and says that they should call it a night and quickly doze off, as they will be climbing mountains and fighting monsters tomorrow. The next morning, Harold notices that Lifa's bubbly and overexcited personality has disappeared. She is keeping her head down and walking beside Harold. Eventually, Harold gets annoyed and asks her why she's acting all depressed for a while now. He tells her that if he has business with him, she should immediately spit it out. Lifa fidgets and then decides to ask him in a straightforward manner. Elle smiles because this is exactly what she wanted. Lifa crosses her arms and asks him if it's true that he was going to be executed. He asks her how he heard about it, and Lifa narrates everything word by word. She asks him why he is a test subject for an important experiment, and for some reason also declared that he would break off his engagement with the daughter of the Sumeragi family. Harold scowls at Elle because he knows that it is her doing. He shakes his head and simply says that all of those statements are mostly correct. They resume their journey, and he threatens to sever the tendons in their legs if they give him weird glances again. That statement only earns him even more weird glances. As expected, Elle isn't satisfied with his response and believes that there is still some secrets to him after all. She hasn't given up and is still looking forward to what kind of stories she will be able to hear from him. The fact that he simply agreed without pointing out anything means that he will make contact with her soon. Soon, they reach the peak of the mountain, and Lifa starts jumping up and down with excitement. Elle warns her to watch out because no matter how dormant this volcano might be, it can erupt at any time. Harold separates from them for a minute and goes searching for something. That's when a flying ice dragon soars through the wintry skies with grace and power. Its massive wingspan is an impressive distance and are adorned with shimmering scales. Elle and Lifa are so enthralled by the dragon's mighty size that they freeze in their place for a minute. The monster flaps its wings and approaches the duo. A smile appears on Lifa's face as she admits that this creature is worthy of being called a ruler of the snowy mountains. She tells Elle to back off and claims that she will take this beast down. Elle looks concerned but is reassured by Lifa, who promises not to let her guard down. With determined eyes, she looks at the beast in front of her and prepares her equipment while challenging her enemy to a fight. The dragon narrows its eyes with intensity as it prepares to unleash its formidable power. For the monster, all he sees is that his territory has been invaded. With a thunderous roar, he gathers all the flames in his mouth and fires them at Lifa, who barely manages to dodge them. Meanwhile, Elle tries to search for Harold and is shocked when he realizes that he's standing beside her, completely unbothered. She asks him if he's going to help her. Harold gives a quick response and claims that he never intended to help her, and now that she has told him to back off, he has no reason to fight this battle. He says that if Lifa can't even do a thing against an enemy of this caliber, she wouldn't even be part of the story. He immediately regrets what he said, as Elle looks at him with question marks imprinted all over her face. As Lifa tries her pieces of equipment one by one, she realizes that this degree of magic has no effect on the dragon. She decides to raise her firepower to take down the enemy in one swoop. Her thoughts are interrupted by a beam of flames targeted at her by the monster. She dodges the attack and throws something at the dragon to distract him. Then she throws a smoke bomb and conceals her presence. The smoke makes the dragon angry and hinders its movement. Lifa uses the time to cast a spell and commands the lights of the stars to burn the dragon. As she shouts that this is the end for the dragon, flames burst from above, and the fire-breathing dragon gets burned to ashes in the most ironic way possible. She walks away proudly, but Harold looks unimpressed. That's when the dragon starts moving again and rises to its feet. With one forceful flap, it flies high into the sky, takes a U-turn and starts falling down at an even faster speed. It looks like the beast is aiming to crash land into Lifa. It won't do the dragon much damage, but it will surely crush Lifa into pieces. Lifa stares at the monster in horror and helplessness. This is where Harold springs into action and unsheaths both of his swords. In a single blow, he makes a grave for the devastating beast. Elle stands in shock and tries to process what just happened. She is wondering if it's even possible for a human to be this strong. Almost immediately, another dragon spawns. It is obvious that the one that just died roared to summon its friends. Now, Harold is about to have a face-off with not one, but two huge fire-breathing ice dragons. There is not a hint of fear in his eyes. He is simply annoyed at having to do more work. He rests his blade on his shoulder and tells the dragons to be obedient and die. The dragons dive towards their target and descend in a swift and calculated manner. Harold jumps into the air and decapitates the beast with his sword. He doesn't stop to catch a breath. He lunges into the air and slashes the arm of the other dragon. Elle and Lifa watch with their mouths open as Harold cuts every inch of the dragon's body. It's almost as if he's letting out his frustration from the past 5 years. Elle realizes that he isn't just some bad boy or a night killer. His power and inhuman strength can't be that simple. This puzzle is getting more complex, and Elle is even more determined to solve it. After he is done shredding the dragon to pieces, he looks at Lifa with blood splattered all over his face and clothes. He commands her to start gathering the samples that she desperately wants. Meanwhile, Elle is still at a loss and is shaking. She quickly gathers her composure and puts on an act. She starts clapping and claims that he is stronger than what the rumors told her. Harold corrects her and says that everything she knows about him is not some rumor. When Elle rolls her eyes, Harold commands her to stop the worthless acting. Her eyes open up wide when he is referred to as Gefelt, the famous informant. She chuckles and asks him if a child like her would really look like such an extraordinary person. Harold reminds her that Gefelt is not the name of a person, but the class of a family. Elle repeats that she is just a humble traveler. She claims that she only knows about him because of how famous it is. He tells her that it is useless to play dumb. He suspects her because his current position is a servant working with the country for free. So how is it that she mentioned him being a test subject? It looks like Elle realizes that it's time to give up. After a short pause, she asks him when he found out about her identity. Harold reminds her with an assertive tone that she is not in any position to be asking questions. She admits to herself that she has overstepped a bit too much by trying to stir up Lifa and use her to extract information about Harold. She reveals to Harold that she is in possession of intel that could be classified as a national secret. These secrets are so heavy that it would cause him inconvenience if he was to discover them. She points toward him and claims that at any rate, he's gaining enormous power from the sword in exchange for his own life force. She also has the intel that if he ever handles this weapon incorrectly, he will endanger the lives of those around him. The Royal Capital's Deliberation Council is the country's most powerful organization, and even if distinguished nobles objected, there is no way Harold's sentence could have been overturned. Harold may be a criminal to the country, but raising the country's military strength through an experiment that toys with people's lives could never be announced to the public eye. It turns out that everything she has said until now is true. Gefelt's name isn't just for show. Back then, when Elle had requested Harold to let her join him and Lifa, he immediately knew who she was. There are mysterious informants named Gefelt who explain the system and meta-knowledge regarding Bravehearts. In the game, Elle showed up as one of them. Their very existence was evidenced by Tasuku 5 years ago. However, the extent of the organization's information network was unknown. Harold believes that, in his eyes, they are an unpredictable existence on par with justice. It would be reassuring for him to have them on his side, but if it were possible, he would have wanted to make contact with them after he had gathered intel. But he had decided to let Elle join their mission, so that he could clarify her motive while also assessing Lifa's strength. Harold believes that Elle does not possess the same power as the one they had in the original game, their meta point of view. However, since her ability as an informant is the real deal, he cannot possibly leave this be. He tells her that she knows too much about him, and he can't just turn a blind eye. She asks him if he intends to kill her, and he says that that would be the quickest way to settle this. When she starts sweating, he claims that killing her would be a waste of time, and would rather consider making use of one of her abilities. He invites her to join him and exercise that power. After experiencing shock, she turns away and claims that she would rather die. Harold says that something that implies that he has knowledge of the whereabouts of her family. She immediately starts panicking. He reminds her that her deepest desire is to attain intel, and she is letting an opportunity slip from her hands by refusing him. She understands her situation, and kneels down on one knee while pledging her allegiance to him. Lifa arrives at the scene before Harold can respond. When she asks Elle why she was kneeling, she responds that she is officially his slave. This is followed up by pin drop silence. Lifa is genuinely concerned and asks if Harold threatened her. After that, Elle says that they should start heading for the royal capital. Harold hasn't been there for 2 years, but he knows that he would benefit from having her by his side. Lifa insists on joining as well for the stupidest reason: to keep an eye on Harold and Elle. In a flashback, Justice showed Harold the sword that he invented. He explained that it absorbs the user's mana and converts it into might. But as a side effect, it whittles away at the user's life force. He reassured him that simply wielding it would not cause any effect, but he must keep this on at all times. Back in the present, Elle asks Harold if his body is okay, since he took down those ice dragons. Harold tries to be nonchalant about it and claims that he didn't really exhaust much. In reality, he just hopes he never has to use it again. They have a meeting with Justice, and Harold warns everyone that they must cooperate with this guy to extract as much intel out of him as they can. When Lifa asks dumb questions, Harold becomes annoyed. Instead of telling her that she's useless, he says that her magic that uses science may be able to pique Justice's interests. She becomes overjoyed when she realizes that he has just acknowledged her magic. He tells them both that he doesn't have any deep expectations, but they must never expose their relationship. Elle becomes curious and asks Harold why he's so interested and who this Justice person is. His silence explains a lot to her, and she realizes that Justice is at the core of all of his secrets. Meanwhile, Lifa recalls her past and smiles. She finally has an opportunity to prove herself.